Elden Ring. We're here. We finally have all beaten Elden Ring and condensed our thoughts enough to talk about it. And by condensed, I mean this podcast is probably going to be 3 hours, and there might be more than one. So
Yeah. Of just madman's drivel too. There's it's gonna be
it's going to
insane.
become nonsense very quickly. As always, I'm your host,
Yeah.
Ryan, and today I'm joined by my duo of co-hosts, one of which is an evil clone. Ryan, welcome back.
I'm here again.
And Brett, of
Hello.
course. All right. We've all played Elden Ring. It was a journey, I
Yes.
think. We're going to follow the standard format for this. So the first part of this discussion, first 30 minutes probably, spoiler-free. We're only going to talk about things that were in the network test and general impressions of like the first 2 to 3 hours. After that, everything's on the table. We'll tell you to get out if you haven't played the game or don't, or are worried about spoilers for things that you haven't seen yet, because nothing's off the table. We're not going to limit anything. So might be some secret bosses you didn't know about that we talk about. If you want to find those yourself, hop out at that point. All right. That said, Elden Ring is a very good game.
Oh yeah.
I don't think you're going to be in suspense for our opinion on this game and that it's worth picking up if you have even a passing interest in a Souls-like that is open world with some really cool builds and spells and fun weapon arts that are actually cool, unlike Dark Souls 3. I think there's a lot of things that appeal to everyone in this game. And I would say this is the most accessible Souls game by a pretty wide margin.
Yeah.
Because the game really encourages you to use things like summoning. You're never put in a position here, aside from like optional super bosses, where you're really going to need to be challenged in a way that is impossible to overcome without some brute force. And the openness of the game makes it very easy to like level yourself up to the point that you feel is good for the challenge you're doing. So I think that's a really positive aspect about this game, especially for people that don't normally play Souls games.
Totally,
yeah. The skill floor and ceiling are like light years apart in this game compared to every other thing that FromSoft has made in the last little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's really it's super easy. I mean, if you've just played a video game before that has XP in it, you can figure out how to make yourself become powerful. But if you don't want to use summons or you want to do like melee only or something like that, the game is still designed in a way where if you're that crazy person, you can beat those bosses at level 1 with just the base club in like 5 minutes.
Earlier today, someone speedran the game in 30 minutes.
Full
ending, everything.
100 hours, right?
Yeah. My first playthrough, which was not as thorough as I thought it was, because I started a second playthrough and immediately found like entire areas that I just hadn't found. My first playthrough was like 69 hours with credits rolling, I think.
I see.
So,
yeah.
This is a doozy of a video game. It's going to keep you busy for a while. I think for a solid like week and a half, I didn't play any other video games when this came out, just because like by the time I beat the game, I was like, I can't handle anything else right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
It just immediately started a second playthrough.
I'm finding difficulty finding another game to play now that I have beaten this game, and yeah, it was the only thing I was doing for until I beat it. I just played it and explored.
And I think the thing here that's going to appeal to a lot of people that maybe haven't been super into Souls games before is the fact that a lot of the itemization and builds in this game almost work like action RPG builds, where you're really encouraged to like experiment and come up with this crazy set of stats that allow you to use a certain weapon that you like, and then you get to use like certain spells that will scale with different stats, and there's ways to kind of make those things scale with other things. The Ash of War system is super fun to mess with, like the basic weapons, because you can turn a basic weapon into an ultra powerful boss weapon, essentially, by using a good Ash of War. So, which for people that haven't played the game are essentially skills you attach to your weapons that you can press by using the left trigger. You'll use a special skill. So, some really fun stuff comes out of that. All right.
And of course, I was going to bring up also that if you have not if you have not played this game and are just looking at people's interpretations, let it be known that the memes where it's oh my god, everything's one hitting me in this game, and then it's my brother in Christ, you made the build. It's true. If you don't put points into vigor, that is your
Yeah.
fault. If you do things that are wrong, that is your fault, because it's literally leveling up the health number and making it bigger so that you don't die.
And I will add that for people that have played Souls games before, scaling works a little bit differently in this game.
In a
All of
better way, I
the
think.
soft caps are a lot higher. In some stats, specifically mind and vigor, and I think equipment load also does this, you'll hit like 20 points in it, and then you'll start getting more every other point you spend in until like 50. So with vigor, you gain like 25, 30 health every time you level it up until level 25, I think. After that, you get like 50 points.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty crazy.
I think every build in this game is basically going to hit 40 vigor because it's such a good stat to dump points into.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's made a lot of stats that formerly felt pretty bad to use very good.
Yeah.
Especially equipment load, I think. Because equipment load in this is a lot more generous, I felt at least, to where when you start out, at least you are able to wear more things than when you start Dark
More
Souls,
things
I think.
than usual. Yeah.
All right. So let's jump into, I think, something a lot of people are going to be worried or concerned about with this game, storytelling. Because Souls games are pretty notorious for obtuse lore and item descriptions that some people love and some people really don't like because it means they can't follow a story. So I want to pose the question, do you think Elden Ring is more approachable in a narrative sense to people that haven't liked the way that Dark Souls does story?
I'd say it definitely does a better job than most FromSoft games when it comes to like storytelling. Maybe like not as good as something I would say Sekiro, because Sekiro had a pretty like concise plot to it.
Yeah,
But like
Sekiro
if
is a
we're
pretty different
comparing
kind
it,
of game.
yeah, if we're comparing it to like Bloodborne, Dark Souls, and stuff like that, Demon Souls, I think yes, because I think right at the start of the game it gives you a really good synopsis of what's going on, and it like alludes to characters that you'd be seeing throughout the game, and like as you go through, like oh yeah, that character, and I also think you can like start to piece some things together in your head, like there are a lot of enemies in this game with the name God in it, so like you're like I wonder why, and then like say oh, like there's a lot of characters with R in it. I wonder why. It's stuff like that, and like it kind of like makes sense and it has a connection to it. And there's still some things I feel like you may need to read into a bit, but in terms of overall, I think they do a much better job at presenting the story and the world of this game compared to the other FromSoft games.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think they do a lot.
definitely.
I would kind of compare it to Bloodborne, where they give you some characters to latch onto pretty quickly, and also give you some interesting like tidbits about okay, maybe what you're being told is not the truth, or maybe what you're being told is not something that you have to follow and agree with. Which I think it does a better job of kind of presenting to the player early on that this is a game with multiple branching paths in terms of ending and whatnot. So you can kind of set yourself up early on for if you want to follow the main path or if you want to follow a different path. I think that makes it a little bit clearer than most other games as to what differences are going to happen when you do those, which I liked. What I really liked about the story here is that there are like entire areas sidelocked to content that you may not see. We're not going to talk about them yet, but there's some stuff in this game that you won't see if you don't do certain story elements. So I think that's really interesting and a good way of handling the typical Souls style of storytelling, as well as just most of the characters in this game making more sense at first.
Yeah, the characters in this game in multiple respects I think are FromSoft's like best ever. Like the only reason that some of them don't have like as full side quest as other ones is because people literally just haven't figured out what the next step for some of them is.
I'll say right now, we still don't know how many endings are in the game.
It's
there's like a loose collection of 3, but maybe there might be a 4th type of ending that you can get. So
yeah, aside from the basic like one that's just like the the
that you
Mass
beat the
Effect 3
game
color
one.
change. Yeah.
Yep. So I think the amount of content here, story wise, is a lot bigger than I think anything aside from maybe the Dark Souls 3 DLC was very story focused. But the
Mhm.
rest of that game, I don't think is nearly as comparable.
No,
And there's a lot of
definitely.
characters here that I think are less horrid than the Dark Souls
Yeah,
games.
yeah.
They give you more friendly NPCs to talk to that are overtly friendly,
Mhm.
which I definitely appreciated.
A lot of people that like terrible things have happened to because of like other things and not like their fault where they like
Yeah.
slaughtered a bunch of people or something. Like a lot of I mean also I think it kind of needs to be said a lot of actually cool female characters this time around and not
Yes.
just lady that sits there. You have a bunch of cool battle ladies that will actually fight with you and are really good and are like the best
Yeah.
NPCs in the game,
Yep.
which is pretty fun to see for once, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I definitely appreciated. All right. So I think overall, general impressions on the storytelling here are much better than other Souls games. I think George R. R. Martin's involvement probably helped a lot because it feels like the
Absolutely.
world here has a more solid construction of
Mhm.
okay, this is how the world works, and we're going to communicate a good deal of that to the player so they have some knowledge of what's going on, even if it is very abstract.
Yeah.
I think that's
It
a good format.
rewards it still does the classic FromSoft thing where it's really gonna reward people the most who are like paying attention a lot. Like if you're just
Yeah.
if you go through like a couple cutscenes or dialogues and you're just like, wait, I just realized I don't remember what that person just said, then you're gonna probably end up being lost. It's not just
Mhm.
like it's not like it's not gonna spoon feed anything to you. So if you're looking for that, you
Yeah.
probably still won't find it here. But I think that the balance of things that they give you versus the amount of things that are up to interpretation, which is a lot, is very satisfying to someone like me who does like this kind of just really wacky narrative that has a bunch of like huge themes and really complex like events happening millions of years in the past or whatever.
I think
Mm.
it's really
It's
a
very
game that rewards you for putting time and focus into it
Mhm.
compared to a lot of other games. It felt very almost Mass Effect in that way, where the more I engaged with side content, the more I was getting out of the main path. So I
Mhm.
think it's
Totally.
definitely that type of game.
Yeah.
At the same time,
And
you can just totally ignore the story.
If you
yeah,
want,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, I mean, you don't really have to pay attention to it. And it's obviously like most FromSoft stuff. Like some people, oh, that's not crucial, but like I feel like a lot of the times, like the story just adds so much to the world that you're in this
Mhm.
time around. And again, it's like going through the game, like, oh wait a minute, I remember seeing this person from the intro, and like, okay, and then it's like, oh yeah, this person is here too. And there's some pretty interesting things that we'll probably get into them once we can talk about spoilers that they allude to in the intro with how the outcome of the game is.
Yeah.
Um, but and it's just as you go on and go on, like again, like they're gonna give you a pretty big lore dump at the beginning with that intro cutscene, but you start piecing a lot of it together, and it puts a lot of context in your head if you can just
Mhm.
like remember some of these names, some of what is said, and it like a lot of it also like feeds into gameplay too, which is pretty neat as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think here the item descriptions that are given to you often have more immediately identifiable lore to them where it feels less like I need to watch an hour-long video to understand some of the like obtuse mechanics of factions and whatnot, and here I can just read some of the items and just be like, okay, I understand what happened in history with this group of people a lot more than I think I would have in Dark Souls 3 with the same set of
Mhm.
information, just because they do a better job at making sure you are knowing what characters were involved with who and what is going on at most points in the game, which I think is
Yeah.
definitely a good thing. All right.
Yeah.
It also
Oh yeah, you go, Brett.
uh because I mean we mentioned of course it's tough to talk about the lore of a FromSoft game without even thinking of speaking his name, Vati Vidya. But like all the other guys that do Dark Souls lore videos, I watched a bunch in the last couple days just to like try to like, all right, I didn't really understand why this happened. I wonder if like other people figured it out just so I can figure it out before the podcast, basically. It's like when you go to Wikipedia in like middle school and your teachers are like, don't use Wikipedia, anyone can edit it, make sure you look at the sources at the bottom so you can triangulate. Literally every single video says at least like 20 things that are different from the last video
Yep.
and like contradict.
Yeah.
So it's just to the point where like every single one in some regard is wrong, and therefore I've chosen to just pick the cool aspects from all of the things that other people think and come at them from what I think is a pretty cool story, I
Yeah.
guess. So definitely feel comfortable doing that, because a lot of things are left up to your interpretation as the player.
I was
Yeah.
also going to say before we move, I know we were talking about mainly story, but this does have to do something with writing. I want to commend FromSoft for actually putting in helpful item descriptions this time around for
Yeah.
most of the armor and most of the items, because it like pretty much just tells you what they actually do instead of like, yeah, like this does something. You know, like it does
It'd be like,
this.
this increases your health or increases your intelligence at the cost of a bit of health. So you know when you put it on what is going on.
Instead of just like giving you a rough estimate.
And what I
I just
love,
wanted to bring,
so very minor, I wouldn't count this as a spoiler, but there's a thing that a lot of people had in the first few hours of the game. They realized, oh, there's a little red box at the top under my health bar with a down on it. And they're like, what is this? And there's a character that you talk to in the hub who warns you that she is taking some of your life and warmth whenever you interact with her, but that you can use her blessing to get rid of it. And just nobody did. Nobody used it.
No.
So for like 2 full days,
Everyone
no
got
one knew what
punked.
this was and didn't
Yeah.
just use the item that gets rid of it. It's hilarious that it went on for like, I think, a full 24 hours before people actually realized what was happening. So I thought it was very funny. I liked a lot of the interactions here where it felt like there's more things in the world to actually interact with in meaningful ways, and that you have like little minute decisions you're making a lot more often.
Yeah.
Which I think makes the gameplay just feel so much more engaging. And we haven't even hit on, I think, the big thing so far, which is Elden Ring's world and level design is the best that FromSoft has ever done. And I think that's a pretty laterally agreed statement.
Yeah.
There's so many variations of level design in this game. You have the legacy dungeons, which are like the big Demon Souls style levels that have pathways and interlocking mazes and all sorts of very classical Dark Souls design. And then you have the open world, which almost feels like, to me, like a Xenoblade open world or something, where they really focused on like creating a painting basically everywhere you're looking. It has that like Ghost of Tsushima feel, where even though a lot of the activities in this world can kind of be boiled down to standard open world activities, just without the icons and whatnot, it doesn't really matter because it's so well done that it just elevates the world itself.
Yeah, we've talked about before in an earlier non-Elden Ring specific episode how this game is like the best at like, oh, there's that cool thing over there. Go
See that cool thing? You can go
see
it.
See tall me climb. That is the monkey brain activation that we were talking about in
and
that
they
episode.
give you the double jumping horse to do that with.
Exactly.
It's just this level of like, I think the level of trust that they have in the player. FromSoft has in the player that they are an intelligent, thinking person and can figure out what they want to do, what is too powerful for them to engage with at the current moment, what is something that they actually are ready for, and what are things that they don't need to deal with. Because I think something to note about this game, you can ignore probably 70% of the open world content and finish the game totally fine.
Yeah.
As just an average player. And you'll still have done a lot of side content because there's tons to do.
It's hard to miss, yeah.
I think it's very, very freeing to have a game that like isn't constantly pulling you every which direction to do things, but just kind of invites you to explore at your own pace and decide if you want to go engage with that crazy tree monster under the big glowing tree, or if you want rather to go back and explore a catacomb that you haven't finished yet.
Yeah.
So
I'll give one of my iconic barely related or relatable metaphors. Other open world games or like big like exploration heavy games are like going to the museum with your parents. And it's like you have to go at their pace. They want to go see this exhibit, and they're gonna sit there for either like 2 minutes, and you're not gonna be able to experience it to the point where you like it, or they're gonna sit there for like 2 hours, and it's gonna be like, oh my god, I want to do the next thing already, but you can't because you're a kid and you're with your parents. Elden Ring is like being a grown up man and going to the museum by yourself, and you can do whatever you want, and you can look at the Van Gogh paintings for however long you want. You can say, "Oh, I don't really like this artist. I'm not even going to go to that corner," or "I want to spend time looking at the sculptures for 7 hours." That's the comparison between Elden Ring and every other game that's just like, "Oh, waypoint, 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 map marker. Here's the character over here. Make sure you check your quest log for the 27 things you have to do." No, you could do
And
whatever you
Brett,
want, almost
how
whenever.
much of a difference does it make that instead of the game putting the markers down for you, you have all of the standard map markers, you just place them yourself?
Yep.
It's satisfying.
It's so
It feels
much
like I'm
better.
on a journey. Yeah.
So, I don't know if any of you have played Etrian Odyssey on the
I have
DS,
not.
but Etrian
I've
Odyssey,
played Persona Q.
Persona Q is very, yep, the same thing. Etrian Odyssey is a franchise that's been going for a long time on Nintendo's portable platforms, and the whole like gimmick with this game is it's a dungeon crawler where you have to map the game yourself every time you're in a dungeon, and you have to like place the tiles down to make sure you remember what pathways you haven't explored, and you can like create this super detailed map, and if you do, the game will be pretty easy. If you don't, you're gonna make it a lot more difficult on yourself. So it's the kind of enjoyment that I got from Etrian Odyssey that hasn't just been in any other game because nothing's willing to do it. Nothing's willing to take that risk, and it's very refreshing to see FromSoft decide to take a risk like that and just not put
Yeah,
most of these icons on the map, and it paid off. So
exactly. Yeah, there's a sense of pride. You do like you found this thing, maybe you can't do it now, but still mark it, and so you can remember it and go back to it later.
yeah,
And it's not necessarily to say that the map doesn't have anything on it. You're not going to find like pointers or thing like that, or like what you'd see like in a like probably like a Ubisoft map, right? But like there's some commonalities that you'll see throughout the map,
yeah.
like okay, there's a gray looking circle, but there's some gray looking circles elsewhere, and it can lead you to believe, like, okay, those gray looking circles, are things that I can interact with and do a fight. Or, okay, there's a black hole with like an orange outline to it. Well, okay, I've been to one of those before, so it'll probably be the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's like, really like looking at your map before like going fully exploring the
It's like they
area and like
actually gave
seeing.
you a map
Yes,
that you
and
can read.
it's detailed in a way that like okay, like all right, well this looks similar to something I've interacted with before. I know what is there from my previous experiences, what I'm able to find. Let's go there and see what I can find.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Exactly.
It's like if you see a giant tree on the map, that is probably a giant tree that will have one of those little tree bosses at it that you can go fight. Or you will
yep,
have like little upgrades to your flask and stuff. So it's got a very consistent design language with the map that I think works extremely well. And it's not to say there aren't map points, because there are a couple. You get map points for any dungeon that you find or like major location. You will get
yes,
like a little map marker, so it'll be like, oh, the big castle on the ridge is Stormville Castle. So you'll have that put down. And you'll have those for a lot of like the little dungeony type things, but not all of them. And those just kind of help to orient you and give you a reminder of areas that you might have found but not actually done anything in. So
Mhm.
I don't mind those, although I do think I would have preferred if those were, because they have like underneath these map markers, they have actual art of like a ruin or something.
Yes.
I would have preferred if they just burned into the map once you got there, like the words. A good example from the first area is Dragonburnt Ruins. Just like right on the map, Dragonburnt Ruins. I think that would have been the way to keep the true consistency of this map not having any markers.
Yeah.
But it's not like I don't think it's a big issue at all. It's just
Yeah.
a minor thing of like there are some map markers here, but they're more spread out and they're not for everything.
Mhm.
So I think it's a big point in the game's favor. All right. I'll also say I had a one particular moment when I was playing this game in just one of the basic little explorable castles that you find off to the side, where I was like, this is just better Demon Souls. Because I very recently played through Demon Souls on the PS5, and Demon Souls is still a great game. Don't get me wrong with that. And I'm absolutely going to go back and play more at some point. But there's a moment in this game where I think if you've played any other Souls game, you're going to realize that they're just doing things with the level design that are insane. I think I described it to Brett as, this is the first game I've played where the jump button felt like it actually means something consistently, because you are like encouraged to basically no clip yourself through the map at certain points and just be like, oh, there's a thing on a rooftop and I can't see any way to get there. Maybe I need to jump off of a building in this direction in a completely opposite area and just climb through the rooftops to reach it.
Yeah, or there's like a 3-inch ridge off that roof that maybe I can press myself into and it'll work.
Yeah, it's very, very freeing, which I love.
Yeah.
All right. I also, unless there's more we want to talk about with level design before we get into the spoiler section, and we'll talk about specific stuff, I want to jump into gameplay and specifically the diversity of things you can do in this game. Because I think that is often a sticking point for a lot of people with FromSoft games, is it feels like it's hard to get started on certain character builds. And like, if I want to do magic, it feels a little bit worse to get started than if I want to do sword and board. I think that still rings true to a bit here, especially if you're playing blind, because it can be very hard to find certain items.
Yeah.
Especially because I started as the Wretch, had no items, just aside from my trusty little club and wooden board terrible shield. And I wanted to kind of just do whatever I found my way to in the game, which ended up being this weird mix of a strength build and an intelligence build by the end of the game. And if you play that way, the game does a very good job of kind of giving you these incentives to try different things. Because like, I hit a point where I was like, oh, this build is maybe not working as well as I thought it would, because I just don't have a weapon that scales the way I want. And then I remembered they give you this little thing at the start of the game called a whetstone. And you can go to your cave and change the type of skill your weapon has. And when you do that, instead of Dark Souls style, you having to use consumable items to change the scaling, you can just change how your weapon scales, as long as it's not a boss weapon, whenever you want, with no consumables taken. So I was like, oh, I can just make this greatsword I found do magic damage and scale with my intelligence. And then I like got an additional like 200 damage off of it. And I was like, okay, I see how they're getting around this now.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really important to make use of that system if you're feeling like you're not doing particularly well, because you can really beat this game with pretty much any build, so long as you put some points into vigor.
Yeah.
That to me is the big sticking point, is health is more important than any other Souls game here, because you will get one shot if you don't.
I think also, like, just in general with the gameplay, with this more than any other like game period, I think if you feel like you're getting your ass kicked, it's probably because you've forgotten to do one of the systems that is in the game. Like, it's like, oh, I'm having, which I think all of us here are like, we're not any of the type of guys to be like, oh, you should make sure to beat the game without using any NPC summons, because that's, if you do that, then you're just a fake fan.
Are you kidding me? I'm gonna summon the crazy jellyfish. That's
exactly,
just a friendly little jellyfish boy in every fight. Because my NPC woman, who's very friendly, gave it to me and said its name is Aurelia. I'm going to use it in every fight.
And it's also like, people like to argue and say that, like, oh, these bosses are clearly not designed with the NPC summons in mind. It's like, what are you talking about? They're both in the same game, and the game is designed well. Yes, they're designed around having that. You don't have to use them. You can still beat the bosses without using them, but you might as well, because it's a system in the game.
And I think if you're more than trouble, before, there are boss fights in this game that feel like they are explicitly designed around the use of that system.
Yes.
To a degree that is like, if you try to do them without it, unless you're very good at the game, you might have a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
But if you actually like upgrade your summons and use them the way they're meant to be used, it'll make fights a lot easier if you're having a lot of trouble, as long as the fight allows you to use them, which isn't every fight, but most of them do.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm curious, what builds did you two use playing through this game? What was your general experience?
Well, let's go with Brett's first, because mine changed a lot.
Mine changed a little, but with my going in philosophy for this game was, I mean, at a certain point, I mean, not really spoilers because it's been in the past, like 3 FromSoft things, but you can respec, and it's very kind with how you respec, which is good. But when I because I figured that was a thing at the beginning, and when I realized it was, I was like, all right, if my build ends up really sucking and I end up screwing myself, I will do that. But I think FromSoft has made a good game, and you should be able to beat the game using whatever build, as long as I decide not to suck enough. So I didn't. I specifically went in not wanting to respec at all unless I was getting my butt whooped. So that being said,
That was my
I
attitude
did.
as well.
Yeah, I did the thing that is, probably the worst in every other FromSoft game, and I do Faith because I love me some lightning spears. And Faith Strength started with the Confessor, I think it's called, which is just such a cool name for a class. And
Great
I
aesthetic,
used,
too.
yeah, I used the one of the first like boss weapon halberds you get for a while. But then just some of the great swords started looking way cooler for Faith, so I started using those instead, and it worked. It got me to the end of the game pretty much. Some parts definitely were frustrating because, I mean, like Ryan said, with the amount of things with God at the start of their game, they're going to be pretty resistant to holy damage, but that's okay because it ended up working out in the end anyway.
At least most of the pyromancy equivalents here also scale with Faith, so you kind of have an
Yes.
option to convert from Faith to pyromancy temporarily without having to change your build, should you want to just throw some fireballs at people and deal with some problems real quick.
Yeah.
I gotta add, the lightning spear in this game is the best the lightning spear has ever felt. It is so satisfying to throw.
It's so good.
Because you can like charge your spells in this one. If you charge the lightning spear, it like does this very quick 2-hit thing.
Yeah.
That's
And longer
great.
range too.
Yeah. It's
Charge.
very, very satisfying to use.
Mhm.
And I think that goes for a lot of the magic here. Just feels better in general.
So I started off using a dexterity build, and so I started with the samurai, and that was going great. Started with the Uchikatana, like love the Uchikatana. Got the curved greatsword, the Bloodhound one, doing bleed damage left and right, having a great time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much the fact that I like encountered a wall or anything, but I was just starting to see a lot of really cool weapons that I could not that I wanted to use, and I wanted to like
That does happen more in
that I
Elden Ring
wanted
than
to
any
use.
other game from Soft has
And
made.
it happened to be that almost every weapon in this game had a faith scaling in
It's
it.
true.
A lot of the cool ones do.
Yep. So I'm like, all right, I want to at least try some of them. So I switched over to a Dex Faith build, and this game is very forgiving in terms of respecking. And again, it wasn't because I was having a hard time. I could have gone the whole game with my +8, or plus ended up being like +9 Bloodhound curved great sword. But I just wanted to do something else, and I was spice some things up a little, see what all this game has to offer. And I was rocking around with the my Dex Faith build. I had the had a pretty cool weapon I got from a tower, pretty cool greatsword. And then I found another really cool weapon. And I'm like, huh, all right, let's go switch over to an Ent build with Dex scaling into it. And I started to use 2 weapons there. One of them you can get really early in the game, and one of them you can get really late in the game. And I was using those 2, and I was using sorceries. That's what I used to end off the game.
I have a feeling you and I ended on the exact same build.
Yeah.
From the way that sounds.
I think you did.
Very good. All right.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna jump directly into talking about areas. So we're gonna start with talking about Limgrave and the starting couple of areas. At this point, spoilers are going to go in order of the regions that we're doing. So if you want to go completely spoiler free, this is your point to exit. If not, just hop off at the point that you want to go in fresh with. And we're going to start talking about things. And we're also not going to limit item spoilers here in terms of like weapons and whatnot. Just don't say like what boss they come from if it's from a boss from later.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about weapons that may not be in the region they're in because we played with those weapons at the region. So without further ado, let's jump into Limgrave, because I think Limgrave is one of my favorite starting areas of pretty much any game, because it's so freeing with how you approach it. And then like you step foot outside of the tutorial cave and you just see this big region before you, and you can kind of go in any direction. And like I wound up going and just missing an entire like half of a region at the bottom because I just never went there.
Yeah, because there's nothing telling you to go there. You can just go there if you want.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's really interesting because that southern continent, which it's kind of weird to talk about it, and like because the southern continent south of the Limgrave, you don't need to go for any story thing, so it's kind of weird to find. It's kind of weird to talk about where, like, in context of everything. Because, I mean, we probably all went to, like, I know we're talking about Limgrave, but, like, with the immediacy of everything, you could pretty much go there right at the start of the game. And I had a friend who did that, and he was able to get through it fine, you know?
Because from what I can tell, Weeping Peninsula is the most low-level area aside from just normal Limgrave.
Yes. It definitely seems like that when I went back and did it. But, yeah, I mean, so at least for me, and I know for Brett too, since we both did the open network test, I don't know exactly what his thoughts were, but, you know, I booted up the game, felt great, said in the back of my head, I wonder where that little tutorial area was at the start of the network test. Oh, well, again, you know, there's a hole there. I'm just going to not read that. And I chose those cool stone sword keys. There were some 2 gargoyles right there.
Yep,
I'm like,
same thing.
All right, yeah, let's just do this. And lo and behold, my first like 40 minutes about was just the Fringe Folk Hero's grave. An area I thought, okay, yeah, no, I have the whole, like, I found everything here, and there's some stuff here I can't kill. And then when I was watching another one of my friends go through, he fell off an area and he found something completely different that I didn't even see.
There's like a whole secret second level to that area that you have to fall off.
Yeah. So, you know, that was at least what I did, because in the network test that wasn't there. So I wanted to go ahead and start to poke around there because, you know, pretty much after that point I was like, all right, for Limgrave, I know a good amount of the first part of Limgrave, pretty much right over to where like the waypoint runes are, up to where the like Murkwater like caves are. You know, there's some of Limgrave I still need to explore, but you know, I'm gonna try to look at this cool new area first, hit some areas I remember from the network tests, and then just start to comb through all of Limgrave.
Yeah.
I do think it's just such a well-designed area, because like the Murkwater Catacombs and that like river section, where is also you can find good old patches waiting for you down there. I did not discover that in my first playthrough at all.
Really?
Yeah, I never went down there because I just never really thought about it. So
that's awesome.
I was just kind of in the mindset of, all right, I'm gonna go, instead of fully exploring Limgrave, I'm gonna go down to Weeping Peninsula a little bit, and then I wound up on my first playthrough before I even like set foot in the main like legacy dungeon of Limgrave, Stormville Castle. I wandered into Lyria of the Lakes, and did that area basically first because I wandered there. So it's very much a game where you can kind of like sequence break, but I think as like a tutorial area, Limgrave does a really good job of teaching you a couple of core concepts for how the world in Elden Ring works, and that they put a boss that's very difficult at the start of the game, the good old Tree Sentinel, right ahead of you when you exit the tutorial cave. You see that boss and you're like, oh, that's the first boss, I can go fight it. Most people probably had a lot of difficulty with that.
Yes.
And I would bet like 95% of people that fight that boss at first leave and come back later. Because the key lesson of that boss is that you can do that. You can leave and come back later, and unless you are very stubborn, that boss is going to be very difficult at the start of the game. Unless I think maybe some classes might have an okay time with it, but I was playing the Wretch, so I was level 1 with a dinky club. Tried to fight that thing, nope.
Most classes at the start, before it, cause you see this guy before you get the ability to level up.
Mm-hmm.
Those classes at the start just get one shot by him because you don't have enough health to withstand a single unblocked halberd attack from him. But it's like short of literally putting the words on the screen, you should not fight him yet. Leave. It's like the most obvious design decision where it's just a glowing neon yellow sign that just like, hey, I'm here. Get out. Because I'm just gonna kill you. I have numbers for all the bosses for how many times they killed me.
Excellent.
Because I was keeping track along with a couple people in another Discord. 23, which is on the upper echelon for the amount of times a boss has killed me. And you know, I think also Ryan and I's interpretation of him specifically is affected by the network test because he was one of the only bosses there because it was just the network test.
Yeah.
And it was just that zone. And you know how many times we'd like go up to fight him and then get him to like a quarter health and the network test ends and it's like I'm gonna kill him. There's definitely we definitely had a little bit of a push
pent up anger.
Yes, to try to get him,
boss.
but after a while, I didn't realize it. At least with me, I didn't realize it. Like when I ran into him, even until after I came back much later and ended up killing him. That yes, he is there to like very early on reinforce that like, dude, some things in this game you might not ever be meant to just like go and fight normally. Like some things are here just for you to like actually run away from, and that's just like it. And that's just kind of it's there in some other areas. This tree sentinel, you are meant to come back and kill.
Well, it's why there are
point.
a lot of bosses in this game that don't have fog doors. Because you can just run away from them. You can run away, you can run past them. And that's with a lot of the like world bosses that you can run into much lower level than is probably appropriate to fight them and be like, oh, time to go. And just peace out. Which is very refreshing.
Which is how normal people do it. But I know Ryan did not do that because Ryan went to some end game areas and beat a couple of things with the like +0 flail. And I just remember watching him do some things that we'll get into areas much later.
Well, there is an important note here. So blood loss in this game works very particularly, and that blood loss does percentage health damage.
Yes.
And is a stat that is on a lot of weapons. And you can use a blood loss weapon to cheese a lot of things in this game if you choose to, which, hey, no shame. Souls games are going to throw everything they have at you, so might as well throw everything you have back. And if you get a decent blood loss weapon early on, you can probably kill some very high-level bosses if you dodge enough. Because you're going to be chunking them for like 10,000 damage at a time.
Yeah.
I do think with me, that was like the wake-up call. And I missed a couple things early on here because I remember I was like playing and Brett and I were in a Discord call. I was like, hey, I don't know how to do summoning. I've gotten a couple summons at this point, but I just can't summon anything. Because I just didn't think to like go to the church behind the tree sentinel where there's a site of grace that you can just walk up to. I just didn't go there until far later than I should have. And had no ability to summon things. I didn't have the crafting kit, so I couldn't craft items. One of the things that are literally at what is meant to basically be the second thing you go to, because it's right there. You see it as soon as you exit the tutorial cave. But of course, my reaction and what I literally did the first instant I was in the world, turn around, head the other direction.
Yeah,
I turned the camera around and walked off, heading south.
Yeah, and again, I think that's just something that, like, again, me and Brett doing the network test, we had a much smaller area, and it's like, you got to go over there at some point, since you have access to, like a 12th of the entire map of the game. And, like, it's like, you know, oh, yeah, there's just a homeless guy here with a horse with a dog. And, and, you know, that's just Yep. Okay, that's where the crafting stuff is, and that's the cool lady there gives you the summoning too. Once you go back there, so it's kind of in our heads already. Like, oh yeah, that's where we have to go. But no, yeah, I like it's kind of like completely off. Like especially for like someone who's just gonna go in a completely other direction. Like, why would you go there? I mean, like
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
like the point of grace would kind of point you in the right direction. Like, hey, you should go there. And it's like one of the first things you see. But like again, a lot of people's intuition is like, no, yeah, I'm just gonna go somewhere else.
And I'm gonna add on to that, Ryan. You know how you have the ability to change Ashes of War to Grace?
Yes.
Because there's an iron wet blade in like the first area that you find with a couple of enemies that you can kind of clear out. There's a little
Yes.
area that you walk into and you get this thing called an iron wet blade that lets you change your weapon scaling and whatnot. I did not find that for my entire first playthrough. I beat the game without the ability to change my
awesome.
Ash of War out of Grace, because as soon as you get a whetstone, you can change it at Hugh. So I was just like, oh, I can just go back to the round table and change it there. So I beat the entire game without doing an Ash of War that was keen, heavy, or quality. The entire game, because I didn't have the iron whetstone that was in that area. I only had the magic and like blood whetstones that you get later on.
That's kind of awesome.
That's kind of awesome, yeah.
So the game does like account for people doing that and not having an item. The same thing with the Wondrous Physic. I just didn't have that for like half of the game until I went back and explored some areas that I didn't go to originally. But there are a lot more missable things in this game that you won't ever miss anything permanently, but you can always miss something and then come back and find it later and be like, huh, this would have been helpful.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that they had the gumption to do that.
It's a power move, definitely. Because I don't think it takes away from the game.
I mean, I didn't even notice.
Yeah. There's definitely like a little anxiety if you're like me and you're like keeping track of all these little things, especially if you're like watching a friend go through and it's like, oh my god, I didn't get that. Where do I get that? I want that right now. Where do I get that? No one's gonna tell me, but I need to find out.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair thing to say. And there's a lot of things just in this game that are hidden that are great. One of the best moments I think in the early part of this game is you're probably going to wander into the Mistwood and look around a little bit.
Yes.
There's two things that can happen here. You'll hear a wolf howl, and then you can go back and have like a whole conversation about that wolf howling with the merchant. If you think to go back to the merchant, and then you can meet an NPC a lot earlier than you would meet him otherwise, like meet good old Wolf Boy, or you can wander into this little like building in the middle of the Mistwood that just looks like a nice little like round mausoleum type thing. You go in, there's an elevator. And you stand on the elevator, and instead of being a regular elevator, it lights up all magical, and it starts going down and down and down
for like
2 to 3
actual
minutes. And you're going down, and you just keep seeing like it get deeper, and then you see like a city underground, and then you see like stars. And then you keep going and see like this beautiful ruin area with lots of lighting going on. It's the kind of thing that I saw this area and was like, this is one of the best areas I've seen in a video game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was great because you can get down there, and I don't technically know like what level you're supposed to do this area at. I think I was higher than I probably needed to be. At least at the start in Siofra, because I'd come back to the Mistwood area after already moving on to Lyria. So that area was probably a little bit under what my power level was at the time. But you see so many cool things down there. You unlock some really neat items by like exploring. There's a whole like jumping puzzle you can do right by the well, where you can like climb on top of this giant ruin structure and then get just a hidden item behind a statue somewhere. It's just such a well-designed area that I think calling that area out specifically is important because it's so beautiful.
And I think just also for playing the game for the first time and not knowing like anything that you're getting into, I mean, obviously with like there not being a mini map and you having to put waypoints yourself, you're opening the map a lot and you're getting to know like the map very well. And especially if you don't know how big the game is, it's like, oh man, there's like so much stuff to do here. Maybe I've already spent 15 to 20 hours in Limgrave alone, not even going to the southern continent, because that was definitely me.
Yep.
And then you go down this 3-minute elevator ride to an area that looks like something that FromSoft has never made before. It looks completely alien. And then you open your map, and everything is dim because you're on another level of the map.
Blew my mind.
Yep.
My blood was coming out of my ears. My brain exploded.
Did you see a little thing at the bottom that's just like R3, toggle underground?
Like, it's just like, what? Are you kidding me? What are you talking about? Oh my god!
And the great thing about that is you don't know how big this area is when you go there the first time, and you might finish it and be like, oh, well, it's not as big as I thought it would be, or it's not. It seems unnecessary to have had a whole second layer of the map. And then just in later portions, you'll stumble upon a river that leads into an underground network of ant caves that leads to an underground city, leads to another underground city.
And an aqueduct.
And just more and more things keep revealing themselves. It's kind of insane. I think that entire area is great.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else we want to talk about in Limgrave?
Well,
we haven't
again,
hit Stormville yet. But.
Associated to Limgrave, but this is where seeing that aqueduct, I'm like, man, I want to explore this whole area as much as I can. And boy, oh boy, did I do.
Yes.
So, there is a cool little teleport gate, because we forgot to mention up to this point, you're going to see some gates here and there. The blue light comes through it, you step into it, you walk through it.
You might also just open a treasure chest in a small ruin,
and
suddenly get teleported into a hellscape and have to run
away. Yeah. We'll get to that too in a minute. So, I just wandered around there, and there's like a main boss of this area, but there's a sort of a mini boss there. His name's a Dragonkin soldier. You'll see him a couple of times, like 1, 2, or 3 times, through playing the game. He's a reoccurring man, and at the level I fought him, he one-shot me.
Yes.
So, but I had my flail. I had my two. I had my 2 skeleton soldiers, and I was like, the bleed proc actually does a good amount of damage. I can do this. So
it was like 2 hours.
2 hours it spent launch night, me trying to kill this thing, and trying to think of ways. Okay, the skeleton soldiers, he's distracted them. Go in. I'm on torrent. Let's use the spinny thing on my flail. Get in, get out. Try to build up the bleed. I got it down to a science, and lo and behold, I killed it.
How many souls did he drop for you? And
16,
and what level?
16K, and I think I may have been around level 18.
Yeah.
Good couple levels there. It's pretty great.
Yeah. But before we get to actually Stormville, you did mention something about a chest.
Yeah, so there's a couple of these.
Ruins. Yes,
one in Dragonburn. So I actually ran into the one in the Tower of Return first.
And so that would be in the.
So that one just teleports you to one of the areas that when you get teleported there, you're like, oh, this is the final area. Obviously, I just can't interact with it at all. Of course it's not.
No.
Stupid idiot. And it's just a chest that teleports you there, and you have a little grace, and you can go back. Then I found the one in Dragonburn Ruins that teleports you to Caelid. And Caelid is this little area off to the side of Limgrave that is placed to tempt you. It's placed there to make you want to go into this area early. You shouldn't. It's a bad idea. It's a hellscape. There are giant birds that are going to peck your eyes out. There's crazy dog monsters. Horrible area. Absolutely awful. But if you go to the Dragonburn Ruins and interact with this chest, you will be teleported into the middle of a tunnel. Inside
irreversibly.
Of Caelid. Irreversibly. You can't get out, and you just need to run. Depending on what level you're there, you just gotta run.
And there's like big bug people that like shoot across the screen in like one frame, and they
big
fire
bug people with Macross missiles.
They fire all them across missiles at you from like across the tunnel, and just I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. I remember I was literally just like, where am I? Where am I? Just like screaming, running past all things.
I remember because you came back into a Discord call in a different Discord server, and you're like, guys, I got teleported to some. I don't know where I am.
Yeah.
I'm stuck.
Do not open the chest of the Dragonburt ruins at 3 a.m. Do not do that.
Oh man. So yeah, and, after you found that I did it, and I got to experience the fun of that as well. But the Dragonburt ruins, there's something else that's pretty cool around there.
Yes, we do have to talk about Agheel.
I mean, there is like if ruins are Dragonburnt, there's probably a dragon that did it. It's safe to assume.
And so again, this goes back to me. I had to go back a couple more months because of when I found Agheel here during the network test. So, I found the Dragonburn ruins. I just looked through them normally. And then I just saw a group of people, a bunch of just enemies just kind of gathering around a little island off in the middle of this lake. I'm like...
Looks like they're around like an altar or something. Like,
yeah, they're just around an altar. Like, I wonder what they're doing. Walk over there. Boss music starts playing. Dragon comes out and... I'm like, oh!
That's what this is.
And again, going back to when I did this is the network test, and I had 20 minutes left before the first network session test, and I'm like, I gotta kill this. I gotta kill this, and let's just say that those 20 minutes were not enough initially, and I had to sit there and I had to wait and I had to sit on it until the next time it came up. Like, I'm gonna kill that dragon. Kill that dragon, and seeing him again here, I'm like, man. It's an old friend at that point,
Yeah.
Good old Agheel.
I think it's a great fight to kind of teach you that you can use your horse in a lot of the open world fights to great effect. I found it kind of hard to like actively fight Agheel on a horse, mostly because I was using relatively short range weapons, and it seemed to be better just to like get off and fight on the ground. But it means your horse is a really good manner of just getting out of dodge if something is coming your way. And like the dragons have this habit of doing this, flap their wings and go back, and then just massive fire AoE everywhere. And you just got to get out at that point. There's nothing you can do. If you get caught in it, you're gonna die. So you have to just get on your horse and get out. So I think it's a great boss at teaching you that sometimes you need to use the horse.
Yeah, to just leave, if anything. I did for me it's a FromSoft game. Minor spoilers, I guess. There are two base archetypes of dragons. Oh no! But this one, especially the one that Agheel is, and a couple of the other overworld guys are, I think, are probably the most fun enemies to fight on horseback in this game.
Yeah,
and I think straight up the best dragons that FromSoft has ever done. Like having them in these big areas with the horse and with destructible environments too. Like just knocking trees over and like splashing water everywhere is crazy. Getting Agheel for the first time and just like riding on horseback, hitting him with a great sword, and like the music is going crazy. It's like one of the first times where I just like I had to sit there like while doing it. I'm just like I'm having so much fun right now. Like I feel awesome doing this. This is so like it feels like you're in a movie almost. Like you're like, oh, that you're that guy on the screen doing that cool thing.
Especially because the fight can kind of go in any direction, and you have this whole like open swamp area where it'll take place, and you can kind of wander to different areas. And, like one of the things I managed to do is get him. There's a bunch of like little land squirts around a tomb there, and if you can get Agheel to get over there, they'll like pop out their poison if they don't immediately die, and poison him. And you can do poison on the dragon that way. And that was a fun little thing to like figure out how to trigger that and make the fight easier at my like level 5 wretch that I attempted it on. So I think it's just a really satisfying open fight. Especially because you do, again, have the option of just coming back if it's too hard.
Yep.
So
I'll always be there.
Yep.
Again, teaching that you can do that. All right. Then we get into Stormville Castle.
Yeah.
Which I think is like, you enter this area and you're like, oh, I'm going to be here for a little while exploring this castle. Absolutely massive. Huge.
Yeah. Super condensed too.
And it just is such a great layout that kind of builds on itself naturally, and there's multiple pathways, and you can approach it from all sorts of directions. And there's a smarmy little bandit man at the start who they're in the trailer. They're like, oh, you might find some friendly NPCs in these places. They show this little commoner man just offering to open the gate or telling you to go off in a side passage. Spoiler for this man. This man takes like 20-something% of all your runes whenever you die.
Yeah.
And what this means is you can abuse him and make him into a money bag. Because when you kill him, as long as Godric hasn't been killed first, he'll drop all your runes again. So you can use him as insurance.
The most useful NPC.
So it's just a great way of like, oh, sometimes these NPCs are not going to be telling you the truth. And you can kind of mess around with that. And I thought that was really fun to see. Not to mention just like the enemy variety in the castle is great because they keep to a couple of archetypes, but they all have like different variations, and you kind of learn the different move sets of these creatures and whatnot. Like the birds are a good example of you have these crazy birds with sword feet. And then if you drop down and do the roof no clip thing, you'll find a crazy bird with sword feet that spits fire. You're like, oh, this is what they're doing now. So
why?
You can also find a Crucible Knight in the castle, which I didn't know. I found it accidentally far later by like dropping off a ledge and realizing there was a ground underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find a Crucible Knight far too early.
Yeah. Let's
Every Crucible Knight is far too early.
Let's not talk about them.
Not yet.
Not yet. So did you go through the front gate or did you take the side path initially?
I did both.
Oh,
So I went the side path first until I kind of couldn't figure out where to go. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to run through the front gate and see what happens. And so I just ran through the front gate for a while and figured out what happened. And I found like the way to get up and actually unlock the gate permanently.
Yeah.
So you don't need man there to let you in. So
yeah.
It's just the amount of different ways you had to get in. And eventually I found out how to get to where the front gate leads you to, going the other path.
Yeah.
Which is great. So
yeah.
There's all sorts of ways to get through.
I took the front path, the front entrance initially.
Yeah. I went through the side and just pretty much stuck there because I saw the arrows coming and I was like, I will turn that off first. You can't
I'll not deal with that.
Because again, going back to the network test, pretty much you could do the side path up until where you could unlock that one door leading to a ladder to climb up, and you could do the first little part of the front path up to like where out there shooting you down with arrows, and that's as northmost you could go in the network test. So like I remember going to the left. I'm like, okay, I had a pretty good idea of what happened there. Let's go through the front and see what else there is that was blocked off. And it's surprising, I guess, it is the front gate, right? But like how fast you can get to the main boss of this area by just going through that front entrance.
It's literally a straight line.
Yeah, it's a straight line.
Yeah, it's a straight line.
It's great. But, there's also like little side lion mini boss thing you can fight. There's a couple of giants off on a bridge.
Oh,
all sorts of stuff to find.
Kind of forgot about that. What are your guys' thoughts on Margit? The fell omen, the man you had to fight to get into.
I'll let you two take this. Let you guys.
Yeah, I wonder why. Ryan.
So, I did Stormville pretty much. I did Stormville as soon as I was done exploring all of Limgrave. I didn't even touch Stormville at all until I looked at everything else in Limgrave. So I was pretty well prepared going into it. However, if we're going back to the network test, Margaret took a while because he was pretty much the hardest boss of the network test. And I think just doing that, I remembered a lot from it, from the original network test, which took me a lot of time. And I was able to do it pretty quickly this time around, but he's definitely like a first kind of big boss, I feel.
For sure, I totally relate.
If you're, well, that's the thing. If you're going and like, following the points of grace, if you're not going other areas.
Hey Brett, you want to go first, or you want me to crush your hopes and dreams?
Well, again, I kept the tally. And mine, I see a lot of people saying that they spent like hours and hours on this man. And while he was definitely difficult, I think it's worth saying that he's like satisfying difficult, where he's just
Yeah, absolutely.
very much that wall to teach you like you know, a lot of bosses are going to use like
Moveset's really
weirdly
cool
timed
too.
attacks.
He has
Yeah,
lots of fun, like summoning light weapons and stuff like that. It just looks
yeah,
visually very cool.
yeah. You can definitely get through it by like just like kind of spamming roll, but if you're paying attention, then you can be like, okay, it's teaching me to pay attention to the actual like sword and not his like overall movement, because he'll randomly slow down like in the middle of a swing, or like let out another move really fast in the middle of it, and you have to pay attention to that in order to get those weird timings down. And so I ended up dying 15 times the amount of times that actually no, because 15 times 0 is still 0. I was assuming you had died once, Ryan, which, spoiler alert, you didn't. Uh, but I died 15 times to him, which I feel like is it's a good wall for most of us.
So for me, I fought Margit at like level 12 with my Wretch. I had the Godric Knight, not the Godric Knight, the like random Godric Knights wandering outside of the castle. I had their armor, not the gloves and not the pants, just the coat and the helmet.
Mhm.
And I had the great sword from there that I gotten spent all my points getting leveled up enough to use the great sword with 2 hands. Kill Margit first try at level
You
12, I
madman.
think. I thought it was a fluke. I thought maybe I just did it easily. I've fought Margit 5 more times on new characters, not New Game Plus characters, just new characters I was messing with builds on. Killed him first time every time.
And I'm convinced this is like the your brain is like a smaller part of Miyazaki's like giant like AI brain or something, because I don't understand how you could do this
I don't
and then
find
die to the
Margit
burial watchdog like 20
Well,
times.
I think the important note with the Burial Watchdog is that was the first thing that I fought on the
Yes.
Wretch. So I left the area immediately, went to just explore and found that catacomb, and then just rammed my head into the Burial Watchdog with a club until it died. Which did kill me like 15 times, 15, 20 times. I was
So
there for
there's the
like 45
trade-off, I
minutes or an
guess.
hour. It was a long time. I just
It's
kept dying
alright.
to it.
It's alright. When we get to,
That was my
I feel like
wall.
there's gonna be some bosses later on, like a certain horseman in Caelid, giant
Oh, wonderful.
horseman. That
Yep.
I did on my second try. So
Margit,
I think just going back, I think there's gonna be some bit of salt between all of us.
A little bit.
the
Certain
thing with Margit
bosses.
that's weird though is I think Margit is like the one boss everyone agrees is very difficult as a starter boss. Just killed him first try.
Yeah.
Godric 2. I think my death
Yes.
total for Godric is 3, and those were on the same character as I was like goofing off trying to use a faith build for the first time. I was trying to just sit back and cast and realize I got murdered by fire 3 times on that one character. The other 4 characters, I haven't died to Godric at all either.
Godric, I think only took me like 3 attempts too. But again, when I was taking him on, I did all of Siofra as much as I can to that point, and I've
35.
Oh, Brett.
I had the upgraded ancestral spirit ashes with me, and just different times.
Yeah. Cut to me trying to do it with unupgraded jellyfish boy, trying to find the perfect time to stun him to get the poison off. Yeah, he Godric was absolutely my highest death total in this game for sure, which I was surprised by. But I also like
too.
it's if I don't know if either of you have watched Jerma play any of this game, but he described
I watched
this
a
the
few other
whole
people.
he described the whole From Software experience of like you just be doing something for like an hour and a half and just be like, I hate this game. This game sucks. This is the worst game I've ever played in my life. And then like you do something else or you beat it and it's like, oh my, I love this game so much. This is the worst game I've ever played in my life. I hate it. It's just that back and forth. It's totally like for you guys watching me play any part that you saw me play.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely the embodiment of that. But I think, especially looking back on it, Godric and Margit both are just like two really solid, meant to be first big bosses. Yeah, because they do their move set is very like telling of what the rest of the game's melee based bosses are going to be like, without it being like impossible for anyone to do with any build. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly you did it on your first try.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, I have to commend most of the boss design in this game because I do think, compared to a lot of other Souls games, it's got the most even curve of,
Yeah.
at least in the main story path, the boss is kind of following this curve of difficulty that's really well thought out, and generally leads you to a natural point with the ending where you're prepared for what you're about to fight, and it feels like the game has been leading up to that point, which I think is great. Stormville Castle to me was just, I love this area because I love the castle aesthetic that some of the Souls games have. I love the level design here. This was the moment where I was like, this level design is utterly phenomenal.
Mhm.
And it really like dispelled the worries that I had that the open world would have detracted from their like corridor level design. Absolutely not a problem. So highly recommend playing the game just to like see the level design of these legacy dungeons. Anything else in Stormville? I do think this is the first time we've seen Nefeli, who's another like interesting side character that you get.
Yes.
In her like side story is one of the ones I didn't finish on my first playthrough. It's because I missed an entire underground area I didn't know about.
Let's see. Stormville would be the first time you see Nefeli. It's when you first time you'd probably meet Alexander.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
Pot Boy.
He'd be outside.
Mr. Hate. And you have to go free his fort.
Yeah.
Besides that, technically, there's the whole
arena with a side quest. You see Roderica for the first time if you meet her.
Roderica for the first time.
Ash of
We didn't
War
even
Man.
mention we didn't even mention that there's a hub area in this game yet.
We did mention it earlier on. I don't think we actually called attention to it, but round table hold.
No,
Yeah.
Because you'd unlock it probably pretty early. We should probably mention, like. Yeah, it's where you're going to be meeting a lot of characters that are pretty important to quests in the game. You meet Gideon; he's your lore master man. You can see D. You can see Rogier. You can see Brother Corin, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
A lot of Mr. Hate. Mr. Smithman. Roderica eventually moves in there. Cool
Tons of
Fingers.
Cool
Yeah,
Fingers,
but around whenever you start, as I don't remember exactly what the exact trigger is.
You have to my knowledge, the trigger is either beating one of the main bosses or exploring an area that is further off.
Yeah,
because I believe you get invited there after you beat Margit, right?
I think so.
Because I think that's the first invite you get.
I don't remember though, because I didn't do Margit until really late. I was walking up.
So you can also get it. I got it the first time by going to not my first playthrough. My first playthrough I got it by killing Margit.
Yeah.
My second playthrough I got it by using the Dragonburnt Ruin teleporter.
That's how I got it too. Yeah.
And as soon as you're in Caelid and use a grace there, I think you get invited.
That must have been how I did it, because I was walking up near Smoldering Church, and it must have transitioned to me a little bit into Caelid, and then okay.
I think it's as soon as you either leave Weeping Peninsula and Limgrave, or as soon as you beat one of the like gatekeeper bosses.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, besides that,
great area overall. Love most of the design here. I think this area is probably the one that's the most consistently designed in terms of difficulty as well, where it feels like they spent a lot of time here making sure if there's a wall, it's intentional. and not
Mhm.
something that's just you running into it too early.
hmm
So after this, you can move on. There's the Weeping Peninsula, which is an area I like, but doesn't have a ton of interesting stuff in it in terms of
Yeah.
boss encounters and whatnot. There's like a misbegotten enemy that is later on just a basic enemy.
Yeah.
So there's some cool things there. There's a cool side quest that you can do. It's a fun weapon. You get like a grafted greatsword that's very cool. Stuff like that. That's fun, but nothing there of like particular note. Unless we
Yeah,
can pull
cool
something out.
stuff. Cool stuff there. I again, besides the Erd trees, which again we made a little bit of mention to, they're everywhere in this game, and if you see an
Yeah.
Erd tree, you should probably go to it.
I do want to call out actually the Walking Mausoleums.
Yes,
Because I
because
do
this
remember
probably
stumbling
Yeah,
upon that and
that-
being like, this is one of the coolest things I've seen in a game.
Yeah.
yes. So, one of our other friends, we found them first, and at least from what I was talking to. And this was before he killed, he went through Stormvale, before he got any of the remembrances. And he just, knocked him down and like, I wonder what we do here.
Yeah, same.
Because,
Because I did that before I had a remembrance unlocked.
Yeah, and you're like, well, what's a remembrance?
Yeah.
And why would I duplicate it? But yeah.
Essentially,
Walking Mausoleums-
for people that have played other Souls games, remembrances are things you get from the big bosses like Godric.
yes.
You'll get like 20 of these or something, maybe more over the course of the game. And at these Walking Mausoleums, you can duplicate them to get both boss weapons in a single playthrough. So
Yes.
you don't need to and you also don't need to hold on to them. You can use them and then go back and it'll show the ones you've already used.
Mhm.
So you can still duplicate them if you used it already and didn't know about these, which is nice.
Yeah. Only other area really I'd want to point out Weeping Isles is besides like the castle where you can get the graphic greatsword like you mentioned is the Tower of Return, which you also mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
Because later on in the game, I guess since we are technically done with Stormville, I should mention this, and I want to get your opinion on this, Ryan, because I know me and Brett did not know about it until an embarrassing long amount of time.
Way later, yeah.
So you know how like they mentioned they talk a lot about these great runes, right?
Yep.
When did you decide to when did you like put two and two together about like going to activate them at the towers?
So I did it kind of accidentally because the first thing I did after I beat Godric was go check out the giant area on the bridge.
Yes. Okay.
So I stumbled into my first activation of them because you get like a thing from bosses which sounds like a stat buff basically.
Mhm.
You go to towers to activate them. And the one I went to first was the one outside of Stormvale. Went there, just ran past all the giants and used the teleporter to get to it. Took it up, found the like husk of the two fingers, and found the great room. I was like, oh, cool. Now, the thing I didn't know for most of the game was that rune arcs were needed to activate
Yes.
the great rune buff.
So I had the understanding that you needed to use the rune arcs to activate them. But I didn't know
what
where to
I
go.
read in the tutorial, what I thought it meant is that they would provide like a basic buff when you had them equipped. And then the rune arc would give you like a doubled buff or something, right?
Yes.
Which is not how it works.
No.
Yeah.
From the sounds of it seems like we both had some confusion about how to get these great runes to actually work.
Yeah, we had opposite halves of the information.
Yeah, so by the time I got my first great rune activated, I did Lyria and I did another area after Lyria. And then I'm like, because that's the thing for the Divine Tower of Limgrave, I did that before going and killing Godric.
Yeah, the door's locked.
The door's locked. I was like, oh, okay, maybe.
Yeah, I did that too. Because I went there first and then couldn't get into it. I was like, oh, maybe I need to do something else.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's the one other thing I was going to say, because those towers are pretty important. And let's just say later on in the game, very, very later on in the game, almost near the end of the game, that funny little Tower of Return leads you to one of those divine towers. It's completely off the map.
Yeah, so I didn't even use the. I think I got a couple other great runes. I'd never got. Well, no, Renala's doesn't give you anything, does it? Maybe I did get all the ones I found.
No, yeah, she gives you.
Yeah, because
Renala's
Renala's
great
unlocks
rune
your ability to like respec.
respecking. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the only other things I want to mention in Limgrave, the rises, where you unlock memory slots for spells. So instead of having to spend points on mind to get spell slots, you get them by getting memory stones, which are in these like puzzle towers or soulblight merchants, which I thought is really clever. I like these as like neat little distractions, especially because there's no guidance really until you find them. You just kind of have to stumble across and go like, oh, this looks like a wizard tower. I wonder if there's something cool here, and there is. Those were neat. And my first wall of the game, the first like wall boss fight I had, the Forlorn Hound Everjail. Because I did this far before I knew about Blaive, so I didn't have Wolfman to help me, and just did this Everjail at probably like level 15. It was after I beat Margit, and brute forced most of that fight until I got the Bloodhound sword and used that for most of my playthrough until I unlocked the magic stuff that I wanted to use. So that was a fun area. Lots of neat stuff there.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to Liurnia, which has your second giant legacy dungeon in the Academy of Raya Lucaria, as well as a ton of like different things that you unlock very gradually. I just didn't find the way to get up to the western side of Liurnia for most of my playthrough. So I just didn't unlock the area with like the 4 belfries and all the stuff like that for far longer than I needed to, because all you got to do is walk up a hill. I just for some reason kept moving past it and not realizing I could walk up it. And just never unlocked that part of the map until close to the end of the game. But there's like 2. I don't know if I would count Caria Manor as a legacy dungeon, but it's close. It's like a mini legacy dungeon.
It's a smaller one.
And then there's the Raya Lucaria Academy, and I think those are like the big features of this area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
As well as there being much larger crystal tunnels here that kind of unveil the underground, like the sub-underground areas that aren't actually part of the underground, but are huge like mini dungeons, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
They're very big, so lots of stuff like that in this area.
I personally, at least for me, I want to call attention to the 4 belfries specifically because we've talked about it before, but they do a thing that I don't know if really any other game besides maybe like a couple Metroidvanias do. Where in
maybe
Metroidvania,
1 or 2 JRPGs have done it before, where they'll like show you something that you shouldn't have seen yet.
Yeah, it's common for some JRPGs and Metroidvanias for you to just like wander into a part of the map and just see like a corner of something like, oh, wonder how I get there, and then you'll get there like 10 hours later or something like that. But this game specifically does it in like the coolest and most like abrupt way possible, where like at least the 4 belfries you're expecting it after a while, but kind of going back to those chests that you can just open, or those random like gates with circles in them that you can find.
Yeah.
You can just like they're purely there, I'm convinced, from a design standpoint, to be like, oh yeah, you think the map is big? What if I made it twice as big by putting you over there and then covering this part in brown because you haven't even discovered the map for it yet? And then you go to the 4 belfries, and then it goes from what if I made the map twice as big to what if I made the map 4 times as big as the twice as big size, and it just keeps going out. I'm convinced all these little teleporter areas aren't just to be like, ooh, hey, put you in a little zone. It's like, yeah, look how big, like just huge power move. Look how big.
Realize how small you are.
Yes, you are insignificant. Look at how proud we are of this thing that we just made, and we're just gonna throw you into some random area in it, and then you're not even gonna be able to get to the other half of it until later, maybe. And the 4 belfries is just like, I mean, it's technically
Super
3
cool.
because there's 3 portals, but it's like just like one condensed little example of like you can go to one little thing in the Siofra River basin, which is the purple area underground that we mentioned towards the beginning. You could just go to an area that you can see from the normal like place that you can walk around, but you can't get there anyway. Besides using the 4 belfries, it takes you to another late game area that's like all the way on the eastern side of the map, and can just blow your assumption of how big the game is out of proportion completely. And I love that attitude.
And you fight basic enemies from these areas, and those are like the mini bosses essentially.
Yes, yeah.
which is super cool.
Um,
And fun thing here, this is the key speedrunning tactic for the game right now.
it
The
is
4
yeah.
belfries, there's an area called Crumbling Missoula, which the 4 belfries can teleport you to fight a little mini boss and give you a teaser. Super cool area. If you like quit the game right as you're teleporting and spawn in, force quit it and then open it up again, it'll spawn you at the regular entrance to Missoula instead
Awesome.
of the other ones. And this is like the key speedrun tactic. I love it. I really hope that doesn't get patched because I think it's amazing.
It's,
It's
Yeah.
the kind of thing that is such a cool tactic where you can just skip 90% of the game and just appear in an area that lets you bypass the majority of the story.
Yeah.
It's great. I love the way that they've handled the content here. And you need like special keys to activate all of the teleporters that you get in the academy. And of course they give you one for free to tease you.
yeah.
So stuff like that just brings you all over the place. You've got another cool dragon in this area that guards the key to the academy. Love that dragon. Very cool. Crazy
Yeah.
glintstone dragon. You've got like the sunken town. That's great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a cool one.
The best character in the game, Turtle Pope,
Turtle Pope, yeah.
the Church of Vows,
Can't forget about
Muriel,
Turtle Pope.
the pastor. He's just a giant turtle with a Pope hat.
With a Pope hat.
Yeah.
It's great. And he's one of the few characters you meet in the game who's just like, oh, you give him heretical tomes. He's just like, all things are equal. We can combine
All
this
things
with
are conjoined.
understanding. And I'm like, I love this man. I love his attitude.
He's a good boy.
There's also a super cool Castlevania style dungeon that you unlock
Yes.
here called the Carrion Study Hall,
Yeah.
which you can enter basically as soon as you find it and do like this fight against one of the worst mini bosses in the game that just shoots magic at you from afar.
The one-shot arrow guy.
Yeah, one shot arrow man. Of course, I had to kill him by just spamming Moonveil once I unlocked it at his face. That was my big tactic for that fight.
Give him what he deserves.
And then, of course, you can do a side quest with Ronnie that goes pretty far. And then once you get pretty far in it, she'll give you an inverted statue. And you can go use it at this Carrion Study Hall to turn it into the inverted castle from Symphony of the Night. And it just turns
So
upside down,
cool.
and it's such a cool area.
Yeah.
It's crazy fun. And that Divine Tower has its own hidden stuff as well. There's another river well here that brings you down to the second big underground area that you can unlock.
Yeah.
Super cool. I love how much stuff is hidden here. There's a couple of Everjails with like side bosses you can do. There's a lot of really fun stuff here.
Yeah.
So you can go, Brett, because I was gonna say that something about this area. But you go.
Well, I
Yeah.
wouldn't you know it? I was also going to say something about this area.
Well, mine was gonna be the lack of this area for me.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah, that's true. This was the area for me that, I mean, as if I wasn't already sold on Elden Ring, that really sold it on me, because during the promotional trailers and art and stuff, they have that shot of your Tarnished looking over the horizon, which is unedited. They have no enemies in that exact. Yeah, that's just what it looks like. They have no enemies in that area, so you can walk up to that cliffside and look out on it because they know you want to, because it's so damn pretty. And it just looks like a certain style of classical paintings that I really, really like. They just emulated that kind of color and shading that I really enjoy looking at. And so this area for me aesthetically is totally up there with one of my favorites. And
it's
I think
also like the nicest swamp level they've ever done.
Oh yeah, it's super. It is very chill compared to the normal.
Even the like poison swamp area, you totally have the option of just staying on your horse, and if you're on your horse, the poison doesn't affect you.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
But one of the I had a couple of those big, like, I just have to like put down the controller and just think about what the hell I'm looking at. One of those being the Siofra underground area, seeing that for the first time, totally had my jaw on the floor. But the other thing that really got me in this area, I don't even, because we're all looking at the interactive map on the Elden Wiki. For those of you who are listening or watching and want to kind of follow along, we're kind of dragging that around. You could see these little green marked the big turtle mausoleum boys.
Yeah.
There's one that's like in the upper right corner of like the big lake. He's kind of separated from the other two. This guy, I ran into that area the first time, just like going, it's like, I want to see how far north I can go in this area. like probably a little underleveled for it, because I hadn't been here before, and it was in game at night, and around these turtle things, there's like ghosts of dead soldiers that walk around in
Yep.
groups of 4, and they all have no heads, and they're all glowing white, and some of them have like wings and stuff, and it's at nighttime, so all of them are like reflecting off the water, and the giant bell is tolling, and there's no ambient music because it's just the bell, and everyone's walking on the super weird shallow water, and there's just this like weird like white little goop tree with candle branches on it, and I go, what am I playing right now? This is the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life, and it's so cool. And then you interact with the little candle tree, and a ghost man guides you to a cave. You follow, he's very slow. You have to follow his footsteps, but going through that super slowly at night and trying to sneak by these ghosts, just so I could focus on following the guy and not having to fight a bunch of things. And just like that atmosphere was like, it was like Silent Hill thick. It was
Great.
incredible. Just that you could have this hidden in a game, in a part of the game that you will never, like, you never have to go there. No one's telling you to go to this corner of the map. You just miss it. It's insane. I don't know how they do that. I
I
don't
just thought of
understand.
so many things with this where you're gonna discover in every area like 4 or 5 different spots that are just clearly they have that Ghost of Tsushima design where you're just meant to stop and look around and be like, this is really cool,
Yeah.
which is great. I'll also mention Ronnie's quest line here is one of the quest lines that unlocks a special ending. Absolutely worth doing. Unlocks the Moonlight Greatsword. That's the
Yes, very
big boy that I
important.
was going for the entire game, and when I finally found it, I was so happy.
It's very good too, which
Yeah,
is good.
very fun to use.
Um,
So I loved
So,
this entire area.
so, um, yeah, I like this area. I don't know why, but I just so I explored a lot of the main area and the lake area, so like the Rose Church all around there. I explored a lot of the western area, but I really did not do anything in the eastern part of the Laurenia of the Lakes. I did the study hall, I met Turtle Man, and I did the River Well and the Erd Tree to the east.
mm,
Pretty much anything else in the east here, I did not touch.
I actually think
uh,
I didn't touch most of the eastern area either until I beat the game and kind of went back and was like, oh, I missed a lot of this.
yeah, like I didn't know like a Jarberg was a thing. I didn't know Frenzied Flame Village was a thing.
yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that I didn't do here, but from what I did do here, I really enjoyed, especially the whole Kyria Manor is probably one of my favorite areas, and then this the
Crazy
whole
hand monsters from the trailer are there that are
yeah
super
Yeah.
creepy.
yeah the whole Ronnie questline too, getting started there. It's one of my favorite quests in the
Yep.
game. So yeah,
Also, special mention Black Knife Catacombs. You can progress Rogier's quest line there and do some cool stuff if you climb on top of a sword that falls from the sky, get on top of it, and ride it like an elevator to a secret tunnel that'll bring you to an area that you can then unlock a super boss with later on. Didn't know about
Oh,
that my first playthrough.
I still didn't know about that.
So there is an entire other like great rune holder you can fight by doing that. It's
Jesus.
like a crazy.
Okay.
That's how you do the rest of Fia's quest line. That just stops randomly.
Oh,
you
that's another way
actually
you can get there.
you
Okay.
don't actually have to do that to
You
progress
don't have
Fia's
to do.
questline.
See, there's so many layers. I love it.
Yeah, because I didn't do that. I did Fia's quest line up until she did something to a man of the fourth letter of the alphabet, and then I was exploring CO for Aqueduct, and yeah, I found something, and then I found her, and I'm like, oh, there
Ride the
you
good
are.
old coffins,
Yeah,
teleporters. It's great. Yeah,
because
the really cool thing if you find that black knife print in the catacombs, Rogier will give you a big lore dump about the night of like black knives that happened and talk about how
Okay.
the undead are like actually not going against the golden order and there's nothing wrong with them, they totally should be alive. It's just like some weird stuff is happening where things in the world are all wonky. So it's just such an interesting little dump of like information, and that's like where you find out that spoilers for Ronnie and her quest line, she's the one who did it.
Yes.
Which you can find out later on in her quest line. She basically tells you, but if you do this a lot earlier, you can know way before you even start Ronnie's quest line, and like Rogier will eventually send you to go do her quest line. So it's just a really cool way to kind of expand that part of the game and learn more about all the stuff that went on. And it just is like, there's so many layers of information here that if you are interested in the background, the game is a lot more willing to tell you than any other Souls game. Where like, if you're interested in learning about all this crazy stuff they mentioned in the opening trailer, you can go find it, and a character will probably be there to give you an exposition dump and say, oh, all this cool stuff happened. It's great. Loved it.
Yeah.
All right. Want to move us on from Lyria of the Lakes for now, because I want to bring some mention to Volcano Manor in good old Mount Gelmir, because this is the area that I just couldn't figure out how to get into for a long time.
Yeah.
By far the most like confusingly laid out area, and I don't mean that necessarily negatively. I just think it is very strange how you have to get into it. Because it kind of like layers on top of itself, and the map is very unhelpful in terms of how to get there. But there's a moment where you're like climbing a mountain here, and you get on top, and all of a sudden, giant bugs falls out of the sky. And starts fighting you. And I was definitely over leveled compared to it, because I think by the time I saw that, I had already beaten Astel. So I was like far past the ability to deal with this thing, but it was still terrifying for the second that it like dropped out of the sky here. So it just is an area that I think does atmosphere very well.
Yeah. So did you walk up to Mount Gelmir normally to Volcano Manor, or did you get teleported there?
Both. So first I got teleported there.
Okay, yep.
Didn't beat the bosses, and then didn't get teleported back. So I got teleported there way early leveled comparatively.
Yeah, because of Raya Lucaria.
Yeah. Which we didn't even talk about Raya Lucaria, but I do want to like give a shout out to Raya Lucaria as a great mini dungeon that we might end up talking about more, but we're already running pretty thick into our time. So I'm going to speed us into talking about the rest of the main critical path and shard holders. So Mel Gelmir's shard holder, good old Snake Man.
Yes.
Crazy fight. I think this is the best like
awesome.
weapon-oriented fight that they have done in a Souls game. Because first of all, someone tells you to use it. When you enter the boss arena, are next to the weapon. So you can't miss it. And then it gives you plenty of time to go into your inventory and equip the weapon. So
thank God.
By far the best use of this mechanic that a Souls game has had, where you have to use like this crazy spear to fight the boss. So loved that. Thought it was great.
When did you do red card comparatively to everyone
He was
else?
the last shardbearer I killed. So I was definitely over leveled, although I don't think it mattered because the weapon was like the base weapon.
More dependent on the weapon level,
yeah.
And I didn't really have any stats in the stats that would scale the weapon, so I was basically doing it base level just with a lot more health.
He was the second one I did.
Yeah, I didn't figure out how to get in the Volcano Manor for so long.
I started to do Raya Lucaria. I got taken by the abductors, started exploring Mount Gelmir, found my way to Volcano Manor, and just went through it.
Which I love. I think it's worth pointing out. I love how many things people thought for like a solid week were just like glitches.
Yep.
Because like why I got captured by the grab attack that all the other whatever something virgins whatever they're called do, but I got teleported this time. That has to be broken, right? And it's like no. If you talk to my man Patches, he tells you that there's one left that has this ability to teleport you to the equivalent of like hell, pretty much.
See, so I ran into that one first, and so I didn't know that it was only that one that teleported me. So I never fought another one for the rest of the game.
That is because they're really hard enemies too, especially with that
They're
boss
really
fight after.
annoying. Yeah.
Yeah, they're super hard to fight, so I definitely can't blame you there. I totally would probably do the same thing.
I just love that it gives you the
Um,
option of doing that. There's so much attention there
yeah.
into what you're doing. I also got to point out here the area, the Gelmir Hero's Grave, was an area I just wandered into, and it's like this. It's a lot like the French Folk Hero's Grave, where it has those crazy chariots that insta kill you. You have to like not glitch yourself, but like jump off in what looks like you're glitching yourself somewhere to fall through the floor and like reach a hidden area to get past the one, because there's an area there where the chariot just will turn around too quickly and you can't not get hit by it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So super cool area. I love the way they handled all of those. I just think the entire way that progression in this area, because it's all optional. You don't ever need to go to Mount Gelmir or any of this stuff if you don't want to. But if you do, you'll find some really cool things. Like you get the crazy Kamehameha spell from over here.
Yes.
Wonderful.
You got the Volcano Manor quest to kill
the
all
quest
those
line.
NPCs.
This was the first time that someone really trolled me with a message, because in front of Crystal Headman, that gives you the Combat Azure spell, someone wrote try attacking, and then someone else wrote be persistent.
No.
So I was like, oh, I'll just sit here for like 2 minutes repeatedly attacking his head to see if that like breaks him out of the crystal or something. No, all you have to do is talk to him and just wait like 5 seconds. It gives the spell to you. So yeah, I love how crazy a lot of this stuff is. I just think it's so well handled. I do want to mention the only shard bearer I had a significant amount of difficulty with was Renala.
Really?
Yeah, I knew that was going to be surprising. So I think the reason is I probably did Renala too early, because I actually entered Raya Lucaria Academy before I ever did Godric.
That's true. Yeah, you did say that.
Because I just kind of, I think before I even entered Stormvale, aside from killing Margit, I went into the way to like try to find a way in, and just went around and went through like a broken bridge, and then found myself in Lyria of the Lakes.
Yeah.
So I kind of not sequence broke, but just skipped the entire first area and went directly to the second and did a bunch of stuff there first. So I was like midway through Raya Lucaria before I ever did Godric. Still not very high level. I think it was leveled like 15 at that point.
Yeah, jeez. That's crazy.
I was very low level comparatively, and then went back to Stormvale and like did a bunch of stuff there and came back. But Renala, I got to and was like, oh, this fight's super easy because it's the first phase is very easy. And so I killed all the things in the first phase, and then she becomes crazy
Moon
person lady with Ronnie giving the moon powers to her, and I was like, all right, thanks. And I didn't have any summons that would stick around for this. Like, super cool. I love this fight. But that to me was like the first wall of, okay, I don't have... At this point, I wasn't a sorcerer build yet, so I didn't have the items I needed to use sorceries. I didn't have a particularly good statted out build for weapons. I had enough health to survive, but not enough like uses of my flask, not enough weapons, so I just had to kind of come back to this eventually. Because the main thing was like I didn't realize the chandelier mechanic in the first phase for a long time, because I would be slightly too far away and like my camera was facing the other direction. I'd take some damage and be like, what hit me? And I did that a long time until I realized what was going on, and I would keep getting to the second fight with just no flasks left. And
yeah, that makes sense.
So that was like my big first wall. Not necessarily because of difficulty, but just like endurance wise, it's a longer fight that you kind of need to prepare for. So
you'll be happy to know that even if you did spec into sorceries, it really doesn't make the fight much easier, because Ryan and I were watching one of our because she's full sorceries and like no melee ever, so her resistance for sorceries is like crazy. And Ryan and I
so what I also did is I changed up my armor set to be all armor that was resistant to magic, and that helped a lot too. If I could now take like 2 or 3 hits. So I just love how it's very clear a lot of the bosses have specific elements and mechanics that you can use to kind of get around certain things.
Yeah. And there's also like, it's like, oh, well, this magic, that this boss is resistant to magic. It's not going to be like every single boss is resistant to magic. They switch the resistances out enough where it's like some things will be more difficult for you, some things like Godric.
And even then, they never make them too resistant to the point where you won't do a good amount of damage.
Yeah.
There's nothing here that's like the equivalent of the demon princes in Dark Souls 3 with pyromancy, where you just like are useless for that fight.
I did this fight on my first try
Me
because
too.
I'm a melee faith boy,
Yeah.
and I just went up and whacked, and I didn't have to worry about. And I also obviously did this way after you did, because I did a bunch of things.
As soon as I came back, I did it first try. So it wasn't a wall as soon as I was ready for it. It was just the kind of thing where getting there too early, especially because she starts to summon things. And I thought I had to kill the summons.
Okay,
so what I also did for the first while is keep fighting them until I realized she was still taking damage when I hit her, and the summons like started vanishing before I killed them. So I was like, oh, I don't need to worry about the dragon. I can just go kill her. Then it was really easy.
Exactly.
So, yeah, and I love this entire area. It's just the way the legacy dungeons are made is so interesting and unique. All right, any other thoughts on this area?
The only thing I want to point out, and it's not really Lyria of the Lakes, it's the thing underneath Lyria of the Lakes, but you did bring up
the river
Estelle, and I really need to shout out because this connects to eventually this connects to another area that 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 you get to when you sit down in a coffin and fall off of a blood waterfall in the middle of a void. Yeah. You get to another thing that just doesn't belong in this game, but it's just there, and it's fully confidently placed. You just got to fight a big skull-faced space worm in a void in the bottom of the map, and he throws meteors at you, and he's made out of like planets.
You can make a flail out of him that is planets.
Yes,
it's so cool.
This not because this specific fight for him is a lot easier. There's a copy of him that shows up later in the game in another optional dungeon underground. This fight of him is easier, but it was the perfect difficulty for me, where I was just able to super appreciate the absolute insanity of him even existing in this world and being able to get through him without like wanting to bang my head against a wall.
I want to call that that and the ancestor spirit for that, because I think those two bosses for me were really the bosses where I'm like, okay, these are not Souls difficulty level of like, it's crushing, right? Nothing here is going to keep being a wall for a while, but these two bosses are visually so distinct, and it's clear that they wanted everyone to be able to see them and play against them and be like, this is a really cool fight. Love it. Yeah, these two are super cool. All right, moving on to Caelid, because I want to talk about Radahn. The rest of Caelid, I think we'll leave for when we talk about that, because Caelid is a nightmare forest of awfulness.
It's a huge area.
Huge area with like multiple areas. You have like a mini dungeon in Celia. You've got like a poison swamp, classic poison swamp in the middle with a terrible boss that's horrid if you run upon them too early level.
Be a shame if they made you fight him twice. So
that'd
be crazy.
This crazy dragon area. There's so many cool things here. It's also where a lot of the rune farms for the game exist, if you are of the rune farming mind, which I never did, but there's a couple that are just existent here. If you do want to be able to make the game easier for yourself, this is an area to go to. Like, there's a couple enemies you can deal with that drop a lot, and you don't need to do a whole lot. So there are ways to kind of power level yourself if you're having trouble. Good old Radahn.
Good old Radahn.
So Ryan, you beat Radahn on second try, right?
Yeah.
Madman.
Hate you. Absolutely.
Radahn was my second try. He was really easy.
because you went around and killed things that you shouldn't have and got 1,000,000 souls, which you earned it, obviously. I just can't believe it.
So Radahn was the second shard bearer I fought. Actually third, because I did beat Renala first, I think. But I was at Radahn right before I'd gotten the Moonveil, so I didn't have my like key intelligence weapon yet. Tried to kill him like 10-15 times, kept dying because I did not know the summons respawned. And I was worried I was going to mess up a character story, so I kept trying to protect Blade and Alexander.
Yeah.
For a lot of the terrible idea, they respawn. I also was under the Monster Hunter brain of like, okay, in Monster Hunter, when something does a dive bomb from the air, you run away and you do a super dive and like iframe through it. So I was like, I'll just iframe through it here by rolling. You attempt to roll this attack, you will die every time.
Yes.
Yeah.
You just have to run away. And it took me like 15 attempts to understand that. So I didn't even see the second half of this fight for that long. Then I left and came back later because I did not get that until that point. Didn't really help that much because I didn't do that much else. I just had a slightly better understanding of what to do in the fight. Came back, was like, okay, now I can probably take one hit from an arrow and not die. That leveled my vigor a tiny bit. Managed to dodge all the gravity arrows finally, get everyone up, get up to him, get to the second phase of the fight finally. Summons 4 giant rocks, kills me instantly.
Yes, those are the one-shot rocks.
I'm not a fan of nerfing bosses. I do think Radahn, specifically the rocks, is so unclear as to what you're supposed to do to not get hit by them. Because you can't see them, he's too big. So you can't see when they fire at you. Because he's skating around on his little horse. So if you're melee, you can't tell what's going on. If you're not melee, they're probably never a concern. Because at this point I was melee, so I imagine this fight is probably easier if you're not doing full melee. Doing this on full melee was the kind of frustration where I just had to hope that he wasn't going to shoot his rocks off.
Yeah.
And eventually he didn't, and I killed him.
Yep.
It's the one boss to me that was really just like, I love the fight. And a lot of elements of it. I think most of it's fine. I do just think the one-shot rocks need some kind of way to counterplay them that makes sense. Because
I'm not a big fan of I boss, you're dead now. I'm not a big fan of just the one-shot like insta-kill attacks.
It's just like every move Radahn has does so much damage.
It's especially this fight is the first thing that made my opinion of I keep want to call him aggro because my distaste towards Torrent is that fervent that I hold him at the same level that I do the horse from Shadow of the Colossus in terms of how annoying he is to ride sometimes. This fight made me hate the horse because it's first of all it's not built for you to be on your horse the whole time because if you get hit with an attack you are stun locked, and you are not iframe stun locked. You are stun locked on the ground for Radahn to hit you 2 more times and kill you without you being able to do anything.
But you constantly have to use the horse to get up to him.
It's
he moves
you need
way too far.
The formula for this fight is you need to be on the horse sometimes, but not always, because you need to roll out of the way of the gravity arrows and then get on the horse to run faster than the infinite arrows from the sky, and then get back off the horse to dodge the gravity arrows, and then your summons get up to the top of the hill to fight him. And then for me, because
you better not hope he shoots a gravity arrow while you're also running from the arrows that ran from the sky, because then
because then that's it. And then you remember that you put levels into your faith for a reason, and then you throw lightning bolts at him for the next like half an hour, and he dies, and that's how I beat him.
I'm glad I brute forced this in melee, but it is not a fight I look forward to playing in future playthroughs that are not spell based, because he is a boss that I love. The first half of this fight, I think the idea of it being like a raid boss with all your companions is super cool. I do think maybe like the one change this could use that would make it a lot easier is just allow me to summon regularly.
But you can't. It's just so weird.
It's weird that you can't summon your regular summons, because I think with the addition of those, it probably would have been a lot more manageable. Especially if you can just save that until the second phase of the fight and then use it then, and just keep him distracted enough where it's not going to constantly hammer you with attacks. But his like attacks are so sweeping that if you're in melee, it doesn't really matter if he's focusing on you or not, because he's going to hit you.
Gonna hit you anyway,
unless you back out.
So big where it's hard to tell when to roll.
It's just
unless you're paying a lot of attention.
I think for a lot of people, this is going to be the wall fight. To me, it was not the hardest fight in the game, but it was second hardest for me. Eventually beat him. I'm wondering, it might be easier on a second playthrough now that I know his moveset well enough. But the one thing I still don't understand is the rocks. I don't get what you're supposed to do about those. And I'm not sure there is anything you're supposed to do, because they stay too long. You can't wait them out.
We have seen in people doing solo level 1 run-throughs where anything from him is going to be a one-shot kill because it's a solo 1 run. The thing that I've seen people do is that when he fires, or when he has the meteors up and he's getting ready to fire them at you, which again you just have to kind of guess because you could do it whenever. It could be 1 second or like 5 minutes. Try to position yourself like lower than he, because there's the big mound in the middle. Try to be at the bottom of the mound, because if they hit the ground in front of you, they do splash damage, and that's part of the one shot kill. If they hit the ground in front of you, that AoE is like huge. But if you're lower than him, they have to go down at you and they can't hit the ground first, and that gives you enough that you would just roll out of the way. It literally it made me look like a buffoon. I watched somebody do that. Ryan and I were watching them do that yesterday, and I was like, I feel like an idiot. You can just roll. You can just roll out of the way if they don't hit the ground.
It's hard to tell if the biggest problem is the amount of damage they do, or if it's just that you can't see them clearly. I think that's
yeah.
Really
If you're up
the
close
issue.
too.
Is if you're a melee fighter, you just can't see the rocks because he's too big. And that's a problem with like one or two bosses in this game, where some of them are just so big and they're so mobile at the same time that you can't tell what they're doing if you're in melee for like much too much of the fight. It just is a little bit too tuned to like where I don't know if it's a problem with the camera or the boss's size, but I think it's just the camera has a problem with locking on in a way that allows you to see what's happening. Because I had that same problem with a boss from a later area called the Fire Giant, where that boss was, I think, much easier than this, but because I was in melee all the time, I just couldn't see what he was doing, which meant that like figuring out when an attack is going to land to roll it or block it is so difficult comparatively.
Yeah.
And I think that's more of a problem here than it's been in other Souls games, because they have more big bosses, specifically with Radahn and that giant. Otherwise, I thematically love this fight. I love the cutscenes you get during and after it. This fight unlocks a whole hidden area that goes to a new underground area in the Mistwood. It has like this entire crazy underground city that's the second underground city that you can find. So I love that the presence of that is great. But that one fight in particular to me felt like the biggest wall that wasn't super satisfying to beat. If that makes sense. Not to say I think the fight is particularly bad, but I do think it's the one that most people who aren't Souls veterans are going to have issues with.
And boy, do they. Because I have read many things of people being very mad
at this. It's optional. It's optional unless you're doing certain quest lines. But for the most part, you can beat the game without ever doing that fight. All right. After that...
Screw you, Ryan.
I don't know. I had this is still when I had the Bloodhound Curve sword. I must have, I was a pretty high level, but, I did Rykard before him and Renala, but a lot of his stuff was hard to dodge. But I just I don't know. It clicked for me.
All right. So our next major area is there's the Eternal Cities that you find underground. Those are super cool areas that I think are some of the best that FromSoft has ever made. Just visually speaking. I can't recall many interesting bosses in the Eternal Cities themselves, though. I think you fight a lot of things that are like mini bosses promoted to bosses. Yeah. But I think most of the interesting underground bosses are actually in the other areas. You fight Astel under Lyria. You fight the Dragonkin, which you can, I think, reach through this city, but it's easier to reach them through the Ainsel River Main. So
two deer boys.
The two really cool deer boys that are great.
The mimic tier.
Mimic tier, super fun.
Yeah.
The Mimic tier I fought right after I'd like managed to build my build into a Moonveil build, and the Mimic tier would one-shot me.
Yeah, you played yourself.
The Moonveil weapon art.
Yeah.
So I had to one-shot it before it could one-shot me.
Which is pretty cool.
There is later on, you unlock the ability to use the Mimic tier as a summon, which is the best thing in the game. I think pretty universally, if you're doing any kind of build that involves spellcasting, the Mimic tier has infinite FP. And does I think a third of your damage, so it still does a significant amount of damage and can solo some
doesn't
bosses.
doesn't cost FP to use. It costs HP.
Health. And health at a certain point of the game is easier to be managing than FP.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used that summon a lot once I got it, although I think I ended up using Luthel the Headless, which is like one of the first summons you get in Limgrave for most of the game, because that summon just had a lot of health and would stay alive for a really long time, which is very helpful. After that, you find the Altus Plateau, which does the Altus Plateau have like a big boss on its own?
Nah,
Not
it
that I
just kind of
remember.
No.
You have
leads to
like the
capital city.
apostle godfire person, which is pretty cool. You find if you watch the opening cutscene, you find Gold Mask here, and if you haven't done the proper quest line, he just stands there pointing at the sky the whole
Yeah.
time.
Even if you do
Very
the quest
fun.
line, he just stands there pointing at the sky. He just moves.
Yeah.
This is also where you can progress Millicent's quest line, which we haven't talked about, but Millicent is another interesting
Yes.
NPC quest line you
Yeah.
can do. It's here, but not a lot of actual boss content in this area.
Which I don't think that's like a negative thing. It's just this as a
Yeah.
as a transitional area is a very good one because it's right in between Volcano Manor's Mount Gelmir, which is very like contained,
It has a
and
lot of
the
little
capital.
dungeons next to it.
Yes. And it has a lot of like just every area of this felt like it had its own theme. Like you have the path up to the capital that has its own like that is very like structured. It has its little like crater off to the side where you could fight the starred fall beast or whatever it's called.
Yep.
And then you have that like the valley in the middle with all those like weird freaky looking like tall death beast boys. That's like the area that you just kind of got to stealth through if you want to keep your sanity. Um, and then my personal favorite of this whole area, I really like the movie Midsummer. I can't watch it again because it's terrifying and I hate it, but I love it. And at the north of this, with the windmill pastures, are just
It
just a
felt
bunch of cultist ladies dancing in
because what's
circles.
great, if you don't fight them, they don't fight you for the most part.
Yeah,
You can just like walk
it's great
through this area and see everyone dancing and like looking super creepy.
and laughing.
Great design.
Yeah, super unique for From
Especially
Software
because you
too.
can tell so many people went to that area and just attacked everything because there's so many bloodstains in that
Yes.
area. And I was like, what's going to happen here? And then nothing fought me. So I guess a bunch of people just
Yeah.
attacked everything and died. Yeah, lots of really cool stuff there, but nothing of boss-wise note. I think the next big reveal area is the capital Leyndell.
Yeah, the
Which
final area of the
is-
game, totally.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Super cool. I love Leyndell. I think it's like a solid advancement on the idea of like Anor Londo being this
Yes,
crazy
exactly.
castle, and now it's just a city. It's got a huge underground area as well with hidden bosses. It's got a great like end boss. Super cool area overall. I loved here. This was the one that had like the classic Dark Souls shortcut you find an hour and a half later that takes you back to the start, which
Yeah.
was great to find. So I love the level design here. I love a lot of the area. The underground is very cool, although at the same time super
Sewers, yeah.
frustrating because it's very maze-like. How you guys feel about Margit? Morgott.
He
Margit
wasn't
I-
that. I didn't think he was that bad.
Yeah, I don't think he was definitely more he felt more difficult than all the things that came before him in my playthrough. But in actuality, I think I only died to him 8 times. If I look at my
Yeah, he
things.
wasn't too. I think maybe like third attempt I got him down. He wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I still didn't die to him.
Again,
My man. But I think also the spectacle in this fight
Yeah.
is like leagues above even Margit and Godric, because
I think
that phase
the like
change.
reveal of the boss
Yeah.
coming down is very cool.
Mhm. And also,
it's also a great callback to Margit, because I think a lot of people that
Yes.
like fought Margit and then will have less trouble on Morgott. It kind of plays into that whole growth that you as a player have and not a character, but just getting better at the game.
mhm. And also, I think it's worth talking about. In the story, when you get to the capital, Melina's just kind of like, "All right, you as the tarnished Uber driver have brought me to my destination, and
See ya."
I don't see you later." And then when you get up to the door to Morgott,
Which for me was like half an hour later.
yeah,
Just kinda ran through a lot of this area.
yeah. I explored a lot, and I just got like super lost. I definitely did not get anywhere.
Well,
near
I
all the things
accidentally
you
got
get
there,
here.
so I didn't mean to like explore the right way.
Yes.
I just wound up there and wound at the campfire or the Grace you
Okay.
sit at, where she's like, "Hey, I'm back,"
Yeah,
and then
It's
I
just
went
like,
and
yeah,
did
it
the
turns
underground
out-
stuff.
turns out the door's locked. You want to beat up this guy together, and then you fight the guy with your classic Dark Souls like bonfire lady, except she's like really good.
Yeah.
And it's like the best NPC to fight with in the game because she has so many spells and she just like flies all over the place. This I could totally, I could totally imagine doing this like solo or whatever because you probably can. I'm sure people have. But
Like, why would you not choose to summon
I
Melina?
yeah,
It's so cool.
because it's just cool.
Yeah, it
really
really
like
just
to
makes
play
it feel like you have been journeying with a person and get to actually do something with them at the end. Which, of course, this is not.
Yeah,
Of course,
you think
it's not
it
the
is.
end.
It's not.
You think you're prepping to be at the end. I actually was confused about this because good old Gideon Ofnir, the All-Knowing, sends you very early to go find the Erd Tree. After you kill your second Shardbearer, he's like, okay, now you're worthy of meeting the Erd Tree. So I was like, oh, we're going to go there and we're going to get like a vision of what to do next. So the entire time, I did not think we were at the end. I was like, oh, we're going to get like a vision of what to do next. And then they're like, wait, you're about to become Elden Lord. I'm like, wait a minute, what? This is the end? I thought we were just going to talk to Marika and like figure something out. No, you're there to become Elden Lord and like finish the game. And it's like, well, no, you can't do that yet. Because, the tree is covered in bad thorns and you got to like literally burn it to the ground to progress.
Says no.
So, yeah, a great little twist. After that, you reveal that, guess what? More game. Even more game that's been hiding from you. Giant mountaintop that's like the size of another entire region that you find and get to explore. Crazy fog at the first area that you have to like find. I found like a boreal dragon that I killed that I think made the fog lesser. Maybe? It's hard to tell.
I don't know.
But I think that was after that the fog was less. Which was a fun fight. There's all sorts of cool stuff here. You can finally complete Latenna's questline, who you can start way earlier. That unlocks a whole secret region of the game with a super boss that is very difficult at the end, which was very fun. So unlocking this area is very cool, like final mix of the game. And you also, this is I think the point where you're good enough to do most of the underground as well, and like explore the deeper depths and see. The Fia ending stuff is stuff I just never did. I haven't done it yet because I didn't know it existed. I started New Game Plus, so that I'm doing on my second playthrough now. But whole part of the game with like a second giant dragon I know that exists that you can fight that I didn't see. So looking forward to that. Yeah.
I will say on New Game Plus you're gonna rip that dragon in half in like 2 attacks.
Oh, I'm not doing New Game Plus. I'm just doing another game.
Okay.
I just started
even still, depending on when you get there.
Yeah, I've been doing that. So I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of that underground area. But yeah, the underground in this is some of the best areas in the game.
Oh yeah,
just the visual design of it, especially the deep root depths, being like this bottom of the Erd Tree area with all these crazy roots growing everywhere, giant bugs. Such a cool design. But the mountaintop of the giants. Now, I assume most of you guys did good old the liturgical town. The area where you get killed by invisible people once you open the Air Jail.
Oh god, yeah.
This to me was the most confusing part of the game because I thought you had to do this, which I guess you don't.
You don't. It's
Question
optional.
mark. I thought it was like the thing you had to do because that's where the lights lead you from Latenna's questline. Doesn't finish Latenna's questline. Latenna's questline's actually at a church down the other way. But I thought you had to do this, so I did this. This is one of the like more frustrating parts of the game to me because I just don't understand what they were going for. With this, because I get there's an enemy you have to like be quick on your feet to not get stabbed by the Black Knife Assassin that's invisible. Sure, understand that part. But then you hit the rooftop and there are aimbotting laser archers at the top that shoot you with 3 things that kill you if you get hit by one and like the other 2 hit into you. Crazy aspect of this. I brute forced this and it took like an hour and a half and it was not particularly fun.
Yeah.
So this to me was like the worst side area because I liked the idea of it, but to me it just wasn't enjoyable. Yeah, I'm curious how you two feel about that.
This for me, because I mentioned it before with the tree sentinel, and again we'll probably talk about Caelid when we can devote more time to individual areas.
Yeah.
But Caelid as an
Yeah.
area has that whole like design philosophy of like these big birds and big dogs, like you are meant to run past them, and there's nothing hidden among them because
Yeah.
you're not meant to
It's just
fight them
areas
like
you
you
run
are a
away
normal
from.
planet. Yeah. So at this point, I kind of had it in my brain like I'm just supposed to kind of like sometimes you're just supposed to run through things to do the thing that they want you to do.
Yeah.
And so this, while definitely, mildly infuriating, definitely, and it took me a bit because you don't know where the little belfries are you have to light. It definitely took me a while, but I don't think it was like super. There are other things in this area that are more frustrating to me than this. But I think just for me, just getting like that in your brain to like run through things, I kind of got down a system where I was able to run pretty much never get hit by the Black Knife Assassin that was invisible.
Yeah,
Just
the
because
Black Knife
I kept
Assassin wasn't
running.
the bad part for me. It was the I don't know, maybe there was another route to get to the rooftop there that you need to find like the last thing.
No, it is just that one.
Just that one. Okay,
So
great.
I
So kept
I
trying
got
to do
down a
that.
system of getting those archers down. It took a while.
What I had to do eventually was manage to run past tank one hit with my shield up from one of them, roll behind so I was too low for them to hit me, peek up so they would start firing, and then wait for them to miss me, shoot out glint blades that delay their firing so that they don't go out until I can hide again. And then that would kill the one that was blocking the ladder up. So I think that area in particular, it's totally doable, just very frustrating.
It depends on your build too, probably, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely agree. But the rest of this area I liked a lot. The fire giant fight I think is very cool, if just difficult to tell what's going on for a large part of it.
Apparently he can fall and like just instantly kill himself somehow, but
Oh, really?
I did see that happen on a video where he just like died.
yeah.
That's me. I think I died 3 times on that fight, so it wasn't too bad, but it's a lengthy fight, so you have to kind of get through 2 phases and learn to deal with his attacks because he has some like big sweeping hits that you just have to dodge out of the way of.
Yeah.
So fun fight, but very condensed. Then you hit the Forge of the Giants. Now, I thought this was like a second area, so I died like 4 or 5 times at the Forge of the Giants trying to like sneak down.
Get to the bottom.
Yeah,
it looks like there's like a little castle area at the bottom. I don't think there is that you can explore.
No.
But this to me was like the one moment where I think they over-designed the Forge a little bit to make it look like there was something you could do at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I kept trying to get there. I don't think it's a big problem, but kept trying to get down. And you can go ahead and light yourself on fire.
Yeah.
Or have Millennium light yourself on fire.
I didn't light myself on fire. I didn't do that ending, but
I was gonna say, are you a bit heretical there?
that's gonna be my second playthrough. I think is gonna do that. But first playthrough, the normal path here is that you sacrifice your companion and use her as kindling to turn the tree into fire, because it always comes back to fire in Souls games.
Of course.
You can't not have someone kindling a flame. So that happens, you pass out and then wake up in Dragonland in the other side of the map. And again, Crumbling Farum Azula, I think, is my like single favorite area from this game, just because it's so imaginative. And how
it is really cool.
The environment just like held up by crazy tornadoes. There's another like secret giant dragon boss here. There's tons of dragon regular enemies, beastmen everywhere, all sorts of crazy stuff in this area. It feels like a proper end game area.
Yeah.
Very akin to like the Nameless Kings area in Dark Souls, except instead of having to do a crazy list of steps to get there, you can just kind of go there. Yeah, I love this area. But at this point, the game is also like different here, because at any point you look at the sky now, the tree is on fire, and it looks very different. So you can go back to Round Table Hold, and your hold is like crumbling, and people are starting to die inside. It's very interesting.
Very sad.
Very, very sad, especially because Master Hugh is just kind of forgetting why he's there, but he refuses to leave. It's just kind of
yeah, they do that whole like dementia storyline with him like actually surprisingly well, which I wasn't expecting. It's definitely pulled at a couple heartstrings, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think it hits you a lot harder, especially because Roderiga at that point is like, I'm gonna stay too.
Yeah,
and help him. Like, well, this is great. Really, the ending we all wanted. Yeah. So I think this is just another great area. Malekith, the Black Blade. How'd you guys feel about Malekith?
Again, took a couple of tries, but again, around that point, I don't think he was like the hardest. The bleed was annoying. I've been using Black Knife Quiche, by the way, for my summon.
Yeah, who's very
So
good.
yeah, the burn just really helped here. Yeah.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is an interesting fight to me because I like to watch, as everyone who plays Souls games does, good old people's rankings of boss difficulty once you beat the game. Someone I was watching put this as the hardest boss in the game,
No.
and I was like, this is another boss I killed first try.
I can see why. Because I have 7, and I never really got to the point where I was like fuming with it. If anything, I like in some ways the first phase.
I died
is
far
more
more to the tree
annoying.
sentinel outside of his building, than I did to him.
I just ran past it. I didn't even bother. I was like, this guy again. I've had enough. But I can understand why, because he jumps around a lot, and if you're not controlling your camera properly, or you're not keeping track of him properly, especially again if you haven't leveled up your vigor, all those things kind of add up here, because he's so fast and he's capable of pumping out a lot of damage. And if you don't have, there's an item you can get that reflects his particles that he shoots at you. It just sends them back at him if you use it at the right time.
That's cool.
If you don't, it's totally.
It's like how you can
too,
buy the shackles for the fell omens to use.
But yeah, I don't think I could see why people could be very frustrated with this, but I don't see him being more frustrating than Radahn would be.
Yeah.
Those two bosses are in the same game. I don't know if I would say that he's harder than Radahn. But I also love this guy because he ended up giving me the sword that I ended up using for the rest of my game. It's so good. When you and your mimic pop off that special attack, you get 2 instances of reduced max HP and like a crazy AoE thing. It's so much fun. And it also looks cool.
Yeah. I think I just got
Yeah.
lucky with him, maybe, because he to me was very easy. I killed him very quickly, and I want to point out at this point I was not overleveled for this area because I skipped a ton of side content by this point. I had not done most of Lyria of the Lakes stuff. I hadn't even done a lot of the underground by the time I was in Crumbling Faramazola, so definitely not overleveled, and I just found him easy. I don't know why. Might have been the fact that I also didn't summon for him, because I think he started coming at me before I could summon. I just forgot to for the rest of the fight. I didn't pull any cheese with him either. I was using the Moonlight Greatsword and firing my waves when I had the chance. So
maybe he's weak to magic too, or something.
Maybe. Yeah, he went down relatively easy for me. Although I do think it's a very cool fight because I love the like reveal halfway through. The phase change and everything is very fun.
His moveset is super cool too.
Yeah. All right. Any other words on him?
Not on him, but I need to vent about a problem that comes up in this area. I'll start with a silly one that's not really a problem and is just kind of like, haha, funny, stupid. That dragon variety bee is one of the big enemies in this area.
Yep.
And they just never give them enough space to actually properly fight, because there's one that's on like a long, like curved corridor that's like slanted, and it's just clipping in the whole time, and you can't really move or like fly around. It looks weird. It doesn't really matter. It didn't make them more difficult to fight. It was just like it ruined the spectacle by like 5%.
It feels like they should have just run away or something when you reach them, and then like you fight them in an arena somewhere. I think would have been a better approach.
Because I understand there being dragons here. It's their like area. But it's weird also that they just have a guy that's on like what I like to call the 25-foot by 25-foot square of cement that he stands on, and he can't walk. It's too small for him to move on, so he just rotates the whole fight, and he can't even attack you half the time. All these dragons pretty much. I think I ran past the first one because I didn't realize that it was like that you could just cheese them that easily. But I think all the dragons here, aside from the secret boss that I know is here, which I did not fight, because I didn't know about it when I was going.
Dude, I made it all the way to the secret boss's area, did not find the prompt to start the fight,
To lay down.
and
Oh,
then
damn.
was like, "Well, there's nothing here," and left.
Yeah. But you can, yeah, I think I got all the smaller dragons on my first try because they just
Yeah.
rotated and couldn't really do all that much. But also the real legitimate actual problem that I think is one of the things that prevents this game from being perfect, legitimately in my mind, is by this point in the game, the reuse of certain enemies and bosses is like
It's a lot.
it's just off the cusp for it to be too much for me to handle. And of course,
Especially
the
because it
thing,
like favors 2 or 3 enemy types over anything else, right?
yes,
It's like 1 or 2 of these knights that you keep seeing everywhere. They keep throwing Crucible
yeah,
Knights at you. They keep throwing the Storm Knights at you, and it's just like,
yeah.
I don't know. I've seen these guys before. At this point, they're
By
still
this
hard,
point,
but it's annoying to see them now instead of fun.
yeah. But by this point, I think I was keeping track at some point and I lost count, and I forgot the exact number. But I think at this point, if at least on my playthrough, the order that I went in, there was Crucible Knight number like 12. And I was like, oh, okay. These guys, I think, have given me something useful, like actually twice.
Oh, because they give
Or
you like no runes. They're super hard to
like a
fight,
mushroom.
and it's just like kind of annoying to fight them because they're never worth it.
It's yeah. And so I went up to him and I was like, all right, but I'm a lot higher level than the last time that I saw one of these. And the last time that I saw one of these, I was able to kill in like 3 hits. And no, they scaled him. So it's you don't get the satisfaction of being stronger than
Yeah,
a Crucible Knight anymore, like you would with the
at
Black
least give
Knights
him a
in
different
Dark Souls.
color or something.
It's
Because
yeah,
I never
because
killed the one here. I just ran past him and didn't bother
he
with
doesn't
it.
give you anything good. There's no point.
I saw like
Um,
one note on the ground that was like no precious item ahead. And I was like, all right, I'm just gonna run past him.
it's yeah, it's not worth it. Which is it's a problem that sometimes the other FromSoft games get into, but usually it's solved by either only having like 2 or 3 of something max, or like they put changes into the fight. Part of the fun of finding the
Yeah.
Black Knights in Dark Souls 1 is because they all have a different weapon and they all have a
Well,
chance
because
to
the
drop
most
that different
interesting
weapon.
Crucible Knight fight is the first one when you have like the one that uses the aspect of the dragon tail
Yes.
attack and like is the most interesting one and the most balanced one in my mind. The rest of them are just like annoying to
It's
fight
yeah,
for the
because
most part.
they're always there for like duo bosses or something, and that's another thing this game loves to do is it loves to reuse enemies. If it was just like one like Godskin guy again, like okay, that's fine. There's a lot of them, but like 2 or 3 fights with both of the Godskin guys
One in which
is
they
not good
respawn twice.
reuse. Yes, one of
And
which they have the 4
yeah.
kings health bar, and it's strange because
They're
the
not even like that challenging because if you summon like the mimic tier or something, you're gonna be fine. But
it's yeah, I beat
it
when I
is the
had the
kind of
mimic,
thing
I
where
beat him in
you
first
look at it
try.
and you go, this is a little bit. It feels less finished in a way.
It's yeah. The obviously the name of the game is Elden Ring, blah, but the name of the game for me this entire time for 99% of the time, and Ryan is messaging me saying that his internet went out, so
Wonderful.
that's bad. He'll be back soon, I'm sure. Um, the name of the game for me has been Detail. This
Yeah.
game never lets up on how detailed it is and how many different things you can find that feel like, even if it's like, oh well, this domed structure looks the same as that other domed structure. There's probably an underground area here. Like that's the repetition that feels welcome. That's like the game design. Um, when you get to just reuse of boss enemies, whether it's hard and you were never able to get used to their moveset the first time or something, if that's the case, I'm sorry. There's like 6 magma worms, dude. I don't know where they had the idea to put 6 of them. And sometimes they're in places where it's like,
Yeah.
does there need to be an upscaled magma worm fight in the random corner of this map in the ice world? No. There doesn't need to be
But
anything
they've
there.
put
Just
it
put
there.
another giant crab. The giant crabs go everywhere,
Dude, I
and
would
they're
have loved the
inoffensive.
magma crab boss. That would have been fun. Like
Yeah.
a magma crab. It bothered me less with the magma worms. I think because they were a fight that I kind of got down pretty quickly. The
Mhm.
Crucible Knights are, I think, the worst offender because there's so many.
Yeah.
And like
Crucible
only
Knights are
2
the
of them
Godskin
give you good
boys.
rewards. The first one is a nice Evergel, and the second one is the one that gives you an armor set and like the tree spear. That's cool.
Yeah.
The other aspect of it I did not like with the repetition is I like the catacomb idea. The basic enemies in the catacomb that you
The
find,
gargoyle
the little
boys.
gargoyle imps, they're easy to deal with once you figure out how, but they are just so annoying to fight.
Yeah.
It's like they made entire dungeons that are repeated tile sets with dogs as the main enemy, where they're easy to deal with once you understand what to do, but they're just so aggravating because they kind of invalidate a lot of your moveset, especially because they also have blood loss weapons, so you can't block them well.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're using a shield, which is what I also forgot to mention, I started this game using the shield because the new counterattack mechanic is
Guard
really,
counters are
really
very fun.
satisfying to me.
Yeah.
So for me, once I figured out like the block and repeat time for them, they're fine because they get stunned after that one counterattack.
Yep.
But also, if you're not using a shield or your shield isn't 100% block, or you're just blocking with your sword, I mean, you combine that pinch, the chip damage with the bleed coming in, it becomes a lot to handle when there's
Plus,
more than like
they
two
often
of
will
them.
throw like 5 at you at once when you walk in a room.
And then you throw in the one with the great sword, and he like breaks your guard. So I totally get that.
To me, it wasn't a huge problem until my second playthrough, because first playthrough I didn't do enough of those areas for it to become an issue of like repetition. On the second playthrough, I've been being a lot more thorough with discovering all the tombs and doing them. And I've already found like 5 in Limgrave with the same enemies. At this point, I'm like, I am over them. I just kind of like want to see something else. And I love the skeleton ones because I think the skeletons are a lot more fun to deal with. Whereas the imps are just frustrating, especially because from what I've been told, they take a lot more strike damage if you're using a strike weapon. But there aren't a lot of strike weapons available for any build that isn't strength. So
yeah, exactly, because they're all like clubs and stuff.
It's the same issue I have with Demon Souls, where there's one area of Demon Souls that you have to use the piercing weapons in, which is frustrating because you have this problem where the enemies just don't really react to anything else. So you feel like you suddenly have to completely invalidate your build to fight them, which is not super fun.
Yeah. I definitely, this is another thing where I could totally understand the frustration, and I can't just like say, "Oh, it doesn't matter because I didn't have the problem," because I could totally understand it.
I mean, I'll qualify that by saying it didn't bother me enough to hurt my enjoyment of the game, right?
Yeah.
It's not a big enough issue that I was like, oh, this is not super fun, but it did mean I stopped doing these past a certain point, just because it was just like, all right, at the end of my reward, it's going to be a summon thing. I found the Mimic Tier, I'm good, right? I don't need any more summons, so...
I will say that just like going through them content wise, even though some of them just like you still tell it's a tile set, because I mean they can't make every single one of them different. Past, once you get like further out of the like the radiating circle of like Limgrave, and you get like further and further out into the game, the variation of those optional catacombs becomes a lot more like
because there's less of them, but they're a lot bigger and they're more varied.
And they have there. I don't know if you found the one that revolves around getting enemies into circles of light before you can damage them.
Oh, I didn't know that one. That sounds fun.
It's that one. I think it's in Altus Plateau. Once you get towards that area of the game, they all have this sort of almost like Zelda dungeon mechanic that they revolve around, and it stays in that one like dungeon. It doesn't even show up in any of the main dungeons. But definitely for the first, like in Limgrave and the ones like right outside that area, absolutely. I think they're almost like meant to be like samey, to either kind of like get you used to them or like lower your expectations, so that when you find the other one, it's like, oh, this is different all of a sudden. But I get that also, where after a while it is definitely just repetitive.
Yeah, I definitely think it's not a huge problem. It's just the kind of thing where it's a little bit bothersome after a while. And it particularly for me was the enemies. It's mostly a deal with the fanged imps are just so frustrating to fight past a certain point, where they're not challenging in a real way. They're just kind of annoying. So I think that was,
especially when there's a lot of them.
Yeah, the biggest issue with them. Past that, I think that we've talked about most of the areas. How about the Halig Tree?
We gotta do the Halig Tree.
The Halig Tree, my favorite area of the game, I think. The brace of the Halig Tree is my favorite.
Yes.
The first Halig Tree area, just run through it.
Yes,
run past everything and go through it.
it's the evolution of the Great Hollow from Dark Souls 1.
And you can tell
Where
it's designed for you to do that. It's not like an
yes,
area where you need to fight everything, but you will get knocked
because
off and die if you fight anything bigger than like one enemy at a time.
yeah. And it's not because it's not just like, oh, there's like the ants here, like sometimes might hit you off. It's like, no, their moveset has been changed from the normal ant moveset to only do the push and shove attack and the poop spray attack and no other attacks because they want you to get pushed off by them. It's
Yeah.
so mean. I love it because it's mean and you are supposed to run through it again. It's one of those areas, but like it's so frustrating.
This is an
It's-
area that is awful if you try to 100% it. If you just are going through
yes.
it regularly, it's fine. Yeah, I didn't have
But
an
even then,
issue
it's
with
still
this once I
beautiful,
ran
too.
through it, but the first like moments of being here and just going, this looks like an absolute hellscape of enemy
Yeah.
design. Those instincts are correct. Just get out. Go somewhere different. I'll also mention I was at the Halo Tree far earlier than I should have been, because it was the first thing
yeah.
I beelined when I was in the Giant Plateau. I hadn't done any of the other main stuff. I hadn't really even explored the Royal Capital yet. So I went to the Halo Tree because I'd been like stuck on this quest for a while. I was like, I wanted to finish the Lieutenant quest. And so I hadn't found her in the church yet and thought she was in the Halig Tree. So I was like, I'm going to go to the Halig Tree and explore there and see if I can finish her quest there. Nope. It's in a church in the church in the giant area. It's not in the Halig Tree. But man, the Halig Tree as an area I think is, if Landell was like Anne Orlando 2.0, this is Anne Orlando 3.0.
Yes, that is what it feels like.
You find a ton of really interesting level design here. There's a lot of variation in enemies. And the final boss of this area, which is, I think this is going to be for a lot of people the true like final boss of the game. Because once you manage to beat Melania, nothing else in the game I think is going to be that hard.
Yeah.
In terms of like execution required to beat it. Unless you're doing, I think with certain builds you can probably cheese her relatively easily.
Probably, yeah.
But if you're doing mostly melee, like I was, summoning is not particularly helpful in this fight because your summons become basically a blood bag for her.
Yeah.
Because the summons don't know how to dodge attacks very well. They'll block them. And if you block an attack from her, she will sap health and heal all the way back up to full if she gets enough.
Yes. And in perfect Bloodborne fashion, even if you dodge sometimes on the iframe, she will still suck health from you. Even if she doesn't hit and damage you, her health bar will still go up when she's doing these crazy long
circle
attacks.
things, you have to like brute force it, or she does like a crazy circle AoE with certain attacks that will insta kill you if you don't know how to deal with it. You can dodge it if you are very careful and run away immediately because it has a long tail, or you can block the entire thing because it doesn't do a lot of block damage. But if you block it, she'll heal a bunch.
This is another one of those things where other Ryan, God rest his soul, his whole power went out.
Oh no!
And I watched a video of a guy doing it, so level 1, and this man turned into like it was like he was in the Matrix.
Because I imagine you can parry a lot of what she does.
It's interesting because it seems like bosses in this game that could be parried, some of them have like a parry stun meter that's like invisible because it takes her 3 parries to actually get a riposte on her. Because like the first 2 just had like a bunch of sparks come off and it delays her attack, but then it took a third one for her to actually get down on one knee and then do the riposte attack. But when she pulls out like the million hit attack or whatever, this man just ran away and then let her come up to me and did like a matrix dodge to the side, just walking without even like pressing B or circle or whatever. He just walked to the side at the perfect time where she just went past him, and it looked like the most badass thing I've ever seen in my life. It's another one of those things where it's just like I feel like a fool, both for getting killed by the one-shot rocks and for the million hit attack, because this man just walked in the right way where it didn't matter anymore. It was really funny.
I think Melania to me felt a lot like Sister Fried from Dark Souls 3 in that it's a very difficult fight, but it is perfectly balanced. It is like a fight that is impeccably done because you can totally beat it. It's not a thing that I think with any build you're going to have true difficulty beating unless you've like 100% built around guard counters. Because if you're doing only guard counters, she'll heal so much that it's going to become difficult to deal with. but this fight is like one of my favorites in the game, if not my favorite fight, just because of how visually cool it is. Her weapon is great once you get it.
Yeah.
I did this fight early enough in the game where killing her gave me enough runes to level up like 20 something times.
Oh my god! Holy crap, dude!
Yeah, I did her
Jesus
early.
That's insane.
I think I was like level 80 something at that point. So I think you're meant to do her around like level 120, maybe. 100,
That's
120.
definitely. I didn't even pass that, and I definitely had trouble because again, I'm not really the best at these sort of games.
She was also the fight that I remember texting you, Brett. I was like, I just did a fight for like 3 hours and I had to stop. The next day, I came back and beat her second try.
That's how it always is.
It's one of those fights. And the second day, I just went Matrix mode because I understood everything that was happening and just dodged through everything at that point. It was a lot easier to handle that way. Because she staggers relatively easily. If you do some jump attacks and whatnot, you can get her to stagger and let you get a riposte off, which does big damage and prevents her from healing when she's doing it, because she's obviously like stunned. That to me was like the thing that made me understand that fight. Is I used the moon veil, didn't rely on the weapon art. I just like jumped and did attacks, and I think I had to stop using the moon veil past a certain point because I wasn't reliably getting the stuns that I wanted. And then I switched back to the Moonlight Greatsword and was doing enough with the light attacks and jump attacks to stun her. So super fun fight. The second phase is one of the coolest reveal second phases because they really fake you out. They really make you think you won. And the first phase is hard enough that you believe it for a little while.
Yeah.
And then you turn around and she's still there. And she looks like an Evangelion villain.
Yeah. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, I love this fight. To me, it was like the true final fight of the game. Of course, we're not there yet, but
no, difficulty-wise, it definitely felt that way.
Yeah, I think after I beat Melania, nothing else in the game felt like a true challenge anymore.
Yeah, I definitely died to things, but
yeah,
actually, I actually died to very many things after this. But also, I got to it way later than you did, so I didn't have too many things left to do.
Yeah, because I hadn't done most of Farum Azula by the time I got here. I still had all of that waiting because I kind of brute forced my way through it. I was like, I'm gonna
it's a hard
hard
area too.
Yeah.
This fight because you end up hearing, even if you're trying to like dodge spoilers or whatever, you end up hearing about it a little bit, like, oh, there's a boss that has lifesteal at the end or whatever, and that sort of thing. Like you're gonna absolutely hate it, especially with me, where like sometimes I just get so tilted and I can't help it because some of the things that happen in these games is so frustrating. This is one of those times where I just like, all right, I'm gonna set myself like, I'm just 2 hours. If I don't beat this by whatever time is after that, I forget what time it was, then I'm just gonna stop and I'm gonna do it again tomorrow. And I'm just gonna full zen, no emotion, just absolutely just like knock it out.
Yeah.
10 tries. Absolutely amazing feel. But this is the one boss in the game where like you always get that Dark Souls feeling. It's like, yes, I beat it. I did die. Awesome.
Yeah.
This is the one boss where it's like, I'm God. I did it. I've won. you just get out of your seat.
Melania feels like you have solved Dark Souls, I think is the way to phrase it. It felt like I now understand Dark Souls on a level that I never have before. And I think it's a very similar feeling to Sister Freed, because Sister Freed to me was the same thing of like, this is so much that once I beat it, I'm like, all right, we're done. Nothing else can approach this. And I'm curious now. I might go back and try fighting Sister Freed again because I have a playthrough in Dark Souls that I got close to her and didn't do it yet. So I might go back and try that again and see if which one I think is more difficult. Because I think Sister Freed might have taken me more time because it wasn't actually 3 hours I spent on her. I think I beat her in like 15 something tries. Maybe a little bit more, but that's because I died very quickly the first few times.
I can imagine.
And being like, what's going on? So yeah, this to me is like the best balance fight in the game. The most fun. The one that I think a lot of people probably won't be able to beat playing this the first time.
It's optional.
Optional super boss. Don't need to do it at all. There's no ending or anything locked behind it, to my understanding.
No, yeah.
So, great boss. I think the only thing that you can get out of this is you can unlock yourself from the Frenzy Flame ending.
Yeah.
Should you have been locked into that. If you do Millicent's quest line. But yeah, super interesting boss. Love it. thematically, and the entire fight is great. All right. After that, we got our final sequence of bosses back in Lanedell.
The Ashen Capital this time.
Ashen Capital this time. You lose access to regular Lanedell with this, so better have done everything you wanted to.
Yes,
because it's gone now. Which I love. I love that idea of the world just like actually changing, because the game warns you. They go like, you're not going to be able to come back from this once you do it. So it's a great process there. Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing, steps up, surprises you, throws out his magic bullet hell spam. Went down in like 2 hits with the moon.
He's another one where he's not hard, but it's cool.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with it not being difficult.
I also do think I have heard of a few people who got stuck on this fight, probably because they didn't have enough vitality to tank a spell or two.
Yeah.
Because my approach to this was like, all right, I'm gonna let him hit me once, and I'm just gonna get him with a Moonveil Weapon Art as many times as possible, and that dealt with him very quickly, as the Moonveil Weapon Art did with most people. It's the best sorcery in the game. I say that, although I think the Moonlight Greatsword's strong attacks do like twice as much damage.
Maybe,
but they take a lot longer to get off.
Too.
Yeah, I love this thematically. I like his armor too. It's very neat with the ear theme.
Yeah.
Moving on from there, good old Godfrey comes back from the dead, slaps you around a little bit, kills his tiger friend, and then good old Horolo from the first cutscene that I'd forgotten about shows up. I love this fight. I think this is another one that to me wasn't super difficult. I think I did like 5 or 6 times. No, I
did this one on my first try actually, which I was very surprised by.
I think the only reason I died is I was really trying to slow the fight down because I liked it a lot and was just trying to like watch what he was doing. I enjoyed this fight a lot. I thought it was super cool thematically. I love the idea of Godfrey just like showing back up, because they set up that he's revived way at the start.
Yeah.
They go like Horolo's back alive, so I like the reveal of that and how cool it was to fight him, especially with his giant ground stomps. Then you get your big reveal.
I came to like those ground stomps a lot.
This to me was like also the point where it's like I messed something up with Nefeli's questline, because I am sure she would have had something to say about this, but
probably
she was just stuck in my roundtable hold going, oh, the Storm King's ashes.
They're pretty cool, right? Anyway, you've been saying that for the past 50 hours.
So yeah, she was stuck there. Part of that I think is that I never interacted with whatever the mage dude who was helping Ronnie does. Never talked to him a single time. So that might have been part of it, I assume.
Even if you do, she still just sits there, for me at least. I don't think anyone's actually figured out what the next step for her.
She has to do something.
It's because I think the alternative is because the maid dude gives you a potion that's like his dungeon underneath his castle is full of puppets that were clearly people once. So the one outcome of the quest is to give her that and have the bad thing happen. The other outcome of the quest is to lie and just give it to Ofnir, and Ofnir's like, yeah, this is a nice try, buddy, and he just throws it away. But then nothing else happens to her. So there has to be an alternative. Everyone thinks there has to be an alternative. There's no way you
give her that Stormhawk Ash, and then she doesn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
No way. So yeah, I like this fight a lot. I think it's just super cool that you see two sides of the same character that feel very different. And both phases are very distinct while still using some similar moves. Which, like, this to me was, I think, the fight that had the best phase distinction that felt like the same boss, but with a new light.
Yeah.
That I liked a lot. All right. After that, good old Marika is actually just a crumbling stone.
Yeah.
Radagon, who is good old Smith man we see in the very first trailer, smashing that ring. Actually, no. The first trailer is Marika smashing the ring, and then it's Radagon in the next trailer.
Because they're both the same person.
But one has red hair and one has blonde hair, and the first smash in the initial reveal trailer is blonde hair.
But they're in like one body is the thing, and the body changes to reflect who's in control, kind of deal.
Which is
the lore around this is so confusing. I will not attempt to explain.
It's confusing because they're also married.
Yes, and
and separate at other points. So yeah, it's very classical mythology confusing. I like the Radagon fight a lot because I think Radagon is a cool boss that is very handleable, but is a
Mhm.
great lead-in to the second half that will probably make you use up some of your resources fighting him.
Yes.
So I think they very much knew that they were designing this two-phase boss fight that was just two separate bosses, basically.
Yeah.
And Radagon needed to be good enough to make you utilize some resources, but not too good to kill you, right?
Yeah.
And I think they landed perfectly with that difficulty level.
Mhm.
I love his weapon, too. The weapon art
Oh,
that you
yeah.
get with it is great.
It's so cool.
After you get good old Radagon, the Elden Beast.
I think this might be my favorite boss fight in the entire franchise.
I love this.
It's like you get all the best parts of all the past like final or like famous boss fights.
Because
from
you
the Souls
get
games
the
are there.
crazy human enemy that you fight at the end, who's
Yeah.
like flashy and does cool attacks. It's your size. And then you get your giant alien creature.
That's literally just 1-to-1 lifted from Princess Mononoke. It's just
Yeah.
the big nature spirit, but with a sword this time, and I love that because I love that movie. But like the music here is like the cool in between with like the sad like
Also to
strings
point out,
and piano
Radagon's
of
music
Gwyn.
is the trailer music.
Oh,
When that
it's
music
hype.
hit, I was like, I'm in.
It's,
And
there were a couple.
I died to him a couple of times just listening to the music.
Just to hear
'cause
the
I wanted
music,
to hear it
yeah.
play.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. Maybe like mechanically, Elden Beast isn't like the greatest like culmination of all the things you could have learned, but that's
I think
Millennia's job.
what I think happened is they really wanted the main story critical path to be completable by anyone.
Yes,
Which I think
it
they have
feels like.
landed at. And I'll say the Elden Beast is like, I didn't kill it first try, so I think it's
No,
good
me
enough. It definitely wasn't as hard as Millennia.
No,
I don't think it should be.
which yeah,
That
I
would be
agree.
very difficult to finish the game then. So yeah, I like this fight a lot just because the Elden Beast is like the kind of enemy that you don't see very often, and it's like this massive thing that you can't keep on your screen. Except in this fight, it felt like that was more manageable than in Radon
Mhm.
and a few of the other giant bosses' cases, where every time it was going to attack, there was this big wind up, and then like an instant where it would start to slam, and you have a moment to react then.
Yeah.
That I think made it very easy to handle. The light waves and whatnot were really cool attacks. Its giant
Yes.
sword is super cool that you get afterwards.
you
Both
get
of
at
the
the
weapons
end.
from these bosses are great.
Yeah.
So I really liked just the whole theme of this final fight. It was very fun. The only thing I would have loved to see, I would have liked if these two bosses had separate remembrances, even though they're the same fight.
That would be
Because I'd
cool,
like to
yeah.
have seen like a weapon art for the Elden Beast that is just some crazy eldritch magic. I would have loved to see
Like the big
Radagon. You get
ring.
his like lightning spear thing. He slams down, and like a
Yeah.
geometric pattern appears. That thing's
Yeah.
super cool. Would have loved that. That's like my only minor complaint. And then you get your ending choices.
Yes, which I think it's worth pointing. I think the way that they do like different ending paths in this game is probably like the best way to do ending paths because
Yeah.
like during when you play the game you get the actual paths, but it's only at the end for most of them, except with the Frenzied Flame, which you can opt out of to do the other ones.
If you beat
It's only at
Millennia.
the end if you beat Millennia.
And do
It's
Millicent's whole
only
quest
at
line, which is hard.
well, yeah. If you keep track of it, which there's a wiki for a reason. It's okay.
Yeah.
But only at the end do you actually make the choice of what ending you get. So most of the time you're not locked into that from the beginning. Like if you messed up a step or didn't get something, you can actually like you can leave the room that the final like choice is in, just like go do the other things to get the ending stuff and then come back if the characters aren't dead. Which I just it's super. I mean, honestly, I think that kind of counts as like an accessibility thing almost because
Yeah.
you're letting it open to as many people to do as much as they want as possible. And having that choice at the end doesn't feel very like gamified where it's like, oh, here's a little menu and you pick. It's like, no, there's like a couple different runes over here, and then there's like this blue thing, and then there's the statue, and then
Yeah. I think both of us chose the Age of Stars, to my knowledge.
yeah,
I think Ryan did as well.
also.
Because that's the one that like has the involved quest line with Ronnie that you do that
Mhm.
unlocks all the crazy sorceries and whatnot. I love the thematic bit of that ending. Let's first talk about the Elden Lord ending
Yes.
variation. So there's a couple of different Elden Lord variations where you fulfill your destiny and become the Elden Lord. You can mend the
Mhm.
world, make it back to what it was before the Shattering. You can, if you find the curse rune of death, fix the rune of death so that things aren't crazy immortal anymore and don't go insane. and basically fix hollowing from Dark Souls. You've got a
Mhm.
secret path that I don't know what the implications of this ending are with Korin, where you get like a
It's yeah,
second perfect rune that does
it makes it more
something.
yellow.
Yeah,
That's all I know.
you've got the Dung Eater's crazy ending where you basically turn everyone into omens. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a lot of player expression here and a lot of options to fit even just within the Elden Lord ending, what kind of character you want to be doing. And the thing I liked about this is it feels like there are legitimately a lot of options here that are less overtly bad than Dark
Yes,
Souls,
for
where it
once.
feels like, because like the whole issue with the round table hold and everything is that you've kind of burned the tree. So I imagine if you go with those endings, the story there is you fix it, right?
Yeah.
You mend it and things are relatively back to normal aside from all the crazy people that betrayed you. But you get a relatively peaceful ending at that point, I think. Which is also why when people are like, "Oh, the Age of Stars is the good ending," I don't know if I fully agree with that.
It's yeah, it depends.
Because I think
It
the
depends.
the implication here is that the standard good ending is like the Elden Lord mending everything and fixing the curse
Yeah.
rune would be my like standard good ending, I think. And I like that that's present for people that need that and want to have like a nice bow tie on their story.
Mhm.
Age of Stars to me is the ending that everyone has a different interpretation of this ending because Ronnie
Yes.
says a lot of stuff during this that can be both good and bad. He's like, "Oh, it's an age of endless cold and crazy stuff," but the way that you interpret those words is very different because she doesn't necessarily mean cold as in bad. She means cold as in the stars and the like expanse of
Yeah.
space. Because guess what? Two fingers are aliens.
Yeah, and the Elden Beast, and the Greater Will, and the
Yeah,
Three Fingers, and
everything's
the weird
aliens
tree
claiming the
things.
power of the Elden Ring.
Yeah.
So
Um.
to me, my favorite interpretation of this ending, which is just my own, we're turning the planet into a spaceship. Let's go.
Let's go,
The
baby.
lands between are now Star Trek.
That's pretty sick.
That's my
Um.
interpretation of where this is going, and I like the openness of this ending a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Because just even being able to have different interpretations, I think,
Yeah,
is a pretty satisfying thing to end on.
the visuals are
And
very cool
I
too.
yeah, seriously. My the thing I settle on with Ronnie's ending is that for the whole game, you know, you have this whole like multiple religions based on like the two, three fingers and the
Yeah,
like the greater will and that sort of thing. And it's all very like this is the predestination
there's always a
standard that
higher
some
power
it's
there.
yeah, some outer god is like controlling. It's literally it's got his fingers in the plans. But with Ronnie's her whole thing is like, all right, free will time. We're turning the world blue,
Yep,
and that's for me. Obviously, you have like the immediate characters that I don't know what happens to them when that happens, and you would probably assume that they're okay or at least dying peacefully, depending on what normal Elden Lord ending you pick. But like in the long run of this universe that doesn't exist and is just pixels on a screen, um, that like great the free will thing it seemed very much more interesting to me.
yeah,
And I think honestly things are left open ended enough where like if they don't do at least one DLC for this game, they're losing money.
absolutely.
They would
Now,
the DLC that comes out is gonna like raise the wages of people at Bandai Namco another $500.
I would just imagine like this is the only one where I think you really could have a DLC that is just seeing the changes in the world after your ending
Yes.
and confronting them.
Yes.
I think that is a super cool idea, and I could even see that being like the whole season pass is like ending by ending. They release a DLC that is like, okay, now the world is a bit changed, and you
I
can go
would
like
love that.
re-explore some areas and see new things, even without like additional land masses or anything. Just see how certain areas have changed, and like, I think that would be incredible. Uh, I would love to see because the Frenzied Flame ending, I think, might be my favorite ending of this game
It's pretty cool.
because it's literally you just go chaos. You become
Mhm.
chaos, and now Jack from Stranger of Paradise needs to kill you.
I was
Uh,
waiting for it.
but what I think is like the perfect DLC opportunity for this game, for people that haven't played the Frenzy Flame ending, essentially what happens is you become the demon. You set the entire
Mhm.
world on fire. You lose your head and are now just flame. Uh, that to me is a cool ending because Melina is still alive. Melina
Yes,
and
she wants to kick your ass.
promises you that she's going to kill you. And she picks up Torrent's ring at the end off the ground and looks crazy. She's got like crazy
Yes.
spike hair. She's opening her like dragon eye and is blind in the other one. Looks
Yeah.
awesome. I want a DLC playing as her trying to kill whatever creature exists because of the Frenzy Flame ending. That to
That'd be
me
so
is like the
cool.
best possible outcome
Yeah.
because she looks like a character that I want to play as.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
100%.
She just goes full anime.
Yeah, I just love how insane that ending looks in the whole setup there of just creating this crazy situation. And there is one thing with the endings I think is odd because you can end up getting an ending with Melina. There's so many M-E
Yes.
names that it's very confusing. You can get Melina alive because you can start the Frenzied Flame ending and use yourself as kindling and then fix it after
Mhm.
you beat Melania. And Melina specifically says if you do that like if you go through with this, I'm gonna hunt you down. If you don't go through with it and fix it,
What happens?
what happens? Where's she go? Because she doesn't show up in the
Yeah.
endings. So
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing I'd like to see is like some thing that acknowledges her being alive if you reach the
Mhm.
end and do that. And I would love to see like a little ending cutscene between the two main characters because Melina is a companion in the story.
Yes.
It feels like that would be a really interesting closing point to end on. So I would love to see that being addressed at some point.
Yeah.
Brett, did you fight Moog?
I did not fight Moog because I didn't know that there was more to the sewers. I didn't go deep enough.
Oh.
I fought Moog win, but I did not fight Moog.
Did you fight Big Blood Palace Moog?
Yes, I fought Moog win. That's Moog win.
Okay, so I fought Moog. I didn't fight Moog win. I did not know the Blood Palace existed at all.
Yes.
I killed
Well,
Moog and unlocked like the ability to do the Frenzy Flame ending, then just left because I didn't know what to do.
Yeah,
I didn't want to do
I
that
didn't
anyway,
even. I didn't get that far down. I made it a personal mission. There were two areas in this game where I was like, if I don't get here by the end of the game, it's gonna be a 0 out of 10. Obviously, I'm
Yep.
joking, but I was serious.
Yeah.
One of them was the big plateau on the Lyria of the Lakes, which you get to at the end of
Yes.
Ronnie's quest line. All right, check mark off the box. The other one was the gigantic glowing red like Roman cathedral in the Siofra lake bed or whatever, the Siofra River. That's just like off on its own side with it. There's like a huge nebula next to it, and
Yeah.
it's just glowing red. And it's like, how? Like, there's a little bit of it sticking into the map. I need to get there. How do I get there? There's just a random teleporter in the north of the map that you can just completely miss.
I just forgot about it. Apparently, you can also get there
Yeah.
by doing the Volcano Manor quests, and something in there will take you there at some point.
Yes, I think it's a White Mask. What's his name?
Yeah, which
There's a
I
thing
didn't
for
do
there.
my first time because I was being a goody two shoes. So, yeah, that area is the only area I still have yet to see, which I am certainly going to be going out of my way to find this time.
Yeah,
But
it's very cool. That fight is super awesome.
Overall thoughts on Elden Ring? This to me, I sent this to Brett. I was like, this game to me has taught me exactly what my tolerance for issues is in a 10 out of 10 game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it has just enough things that bother me that I could have seen myself, if I wasn't as into Souls games, not liking this much. But
yeah,
because it is such a great execution of all the Souls things that I love, even with the flaws, there's like no other game that comes this close to having so many cool weapons, so many cool abilities that you can use, so much gameplay available to you, and just the freedom of the map is unprecedented. I think it's great.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. Where this is like a couple times I've been like just like on like the number scale that I mean probably shouldn't use all the time anyway. It's like is this a 9? Is this an 8? Is this a 10? There are a lot of things that I do not like about this game with like the repetition.
Yeah.
Some of the design choices in retrospect I don't not like. It just took me a while to get used to them, and now again in retrospect after thinking about it, I get it. I could see people absolutely hating this game, but the preface like full disclosure, you can have your own opinion and do your own thing that you like. Unfortunately for you, you are wrong.
Yeah.
If you say that about Elden Ring, which I mean, obviously there's like, joking, but some of the complaints that are more mainstream that people have, I feel like it's worthwhile bringing those up. Just because they are complaints about oh, there's like the UI is and UX is terrible. There's not enough things on the map. I don't know what I'm doing. Did you do you people go to school? Like, just like pay attention. It's all there. It's all there in the game.
At-
All these systems are
Attention span has
there
become a problem with video game players
legitimately.
recently, and it's a shame because it means a lot of games
Yeah.
like this are kind of dying off, where you don't get that guidance and you get to really explore for yourself.
Yeah, which is it's a shame because having that agency is, I think, my absolute favorite part of this game. And this is someone who absolutely hates most open world games. And I think I have to edit that statement. Is that I don't like. I no longer don't like open world games. I hate what open world games have become.
Yeah.
Because things like Shadow of the Colossus. I mean, this game has Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus
Yeah.
walked so Elden Ring could run. Is I think
Because it
pretty
makes it so
pretty easy to say.
abundantly clear that there is a better way to do things.
Yeah.
That, and like, I don't need every game to be like Elden Ring, right? Like, I
Yeah,
think
of
Brett and
course.
I are very, very adamant in that games should not be the same thing, right?
Mhm.
Not every game needs to emulate every other game, and there is not one solution to any one problem. Generally, it's a myriad of things you can use to tackle any individual issue. And I think Elden Ring just chose so many of the right choices when they were designing solutions to the open world problem that have become a like standard that I hope is everything doesn't emulate. I don't think they will, but I do
I don't
hope.
think they can.
I think a lot of things need to take some cues and realize that their players are not stupid, and
Yes.
people will absolutely play a game that is difficult and offers like an enigma worth of content where you're just trying to explore and figure out where to find things. Absolutely, people will do it. You just need to have a modicum of restraint
It's yeah.
and
And
faith in your player base.
yeah. I just say like straight up respect for your player
Yeah.
base because certain times I mean had we done that tutorial conversation in the podcast that we recorded yesterday, we
Which we
probably
will
would have come
do.
up on
We're
like
gonna get
just
to that at some
yeah.
point. But
And this will definitely come up just like having that like respect and understanding that your players are to a degree you have to stupid proof stuff, of course. But like ultimately the people playing your game are human beings that have brains that should function enough that they can like put two and two together. And also if they don't, I mean, like this interactive map exists for a reason. The wiki exists for a reason. There's so many people that make videos about this, and I don't think with this game, especially with how dense it
Yeah.
is, how encyclopedic it is, I don't think anyone. Well, people are gonna make fun of you and yell at you for using like outside sources, but I don't think
they're dumb. Don't listen to them.
yeah, you're at least safe with Ryan and I that we won't make fun of you, at least not seriously.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much to this game, and to experience it fully, if you have to use like a walkthrough or something, I don't think there's anything wrong with that because you get to experience it fully.
Yeah.
So yeah, long-winded way of saying that this game threw me for a loop, and there are definitely a couple things that I was like, oh, this is how'd this get in? There's really nothing in this game that would
There is like a
pull it
whole
down for
rant I
anything.
could go on about sorcery balance specifically, but I think
Yeah.
it's not enough of a problem that's needed.
No,
Really.
yeah.
So
This is the best game that FromSoft has made, I think, at least for me. I don't know
yeah,
about
I
you,
think that's a
Ryan.
pretty acceptable statement.
Yeah, which is like like saying that something is the best that someone has made is one thing, but like
FromSoft has
almost
never
every
made
single
anything
thing
bad, at least in
they
the last
have
like
not.
15 years.
Miyazaki has not touched anything that has been even like mediocre. Like say what you will about Dark Souls 2 or what people think about Demon Souls now, but those games are still great. There's
Yeah.
really like anything that tries to be like this, like, and I'm only saying from like past experience of what we've seen, just like trips and falls and fails. And From Software seems like the only like dev team that can really pull something like this off
Yeah.
with this amount of like flying colors. So I don't think it's a perfect 10 out of 10, but it's definitely a 10 out of 10. And I think if you're on the fence about buying it, I've talked to a lot of friends that have never played a Soulsborne game before, but they tried Elden Ring and now they're like hooked, and they say that they get it immediately.
I mean, if you don't try
I
it, you're never
love
gonna know. At least here,
exactly.
you know you are playing the best form of Dark Souls, and if you don't like it, at that point you can kind of know that it's just not a genre you're gonna mesh with.
There's no clunk, there's no jank at all. Almost, I want to say, except for like very like small
Minor
isolated incidents.
circumstances.
Yeah,
that
it's not like
occasionally
built
happen.
into the engine like it was in the older games.
There is
Um,
one instance of that right now, in that some arcane scaling is just broken on weapons
Oh,
that
is it
have
yeah,
multiple
yeah.
damage, and you just don't get any damage boost on those weapons, which is
But
bad.
that's like an update away from
Yeah.
fixing. It's not like they don't support their games, but it's still definitely it's a little weird that it's like that. Um, I don't know. There's you can't say enough good about this game, which is why we're gonna do more than one episode.
Yeah, I
on
think
it.
this is definitely decided. My plan is for what I think would be a good kind of mini series on this is to go area by area and just do a bit of a showcase of design elements and bosses and art and whatnot.
Yeah,
Not from
for
like
sure.
a lore standpoint, but from a game design standpoint and game development, being
Mhm.
like, this is why people like this so much. I think would be very fun. So that's the current plan, I think. Episode's over 3 hours. It's the longest podcast we've ever done, which we knew going into this was going to happen. So,
It cost Ryan to get it out. We had to use him as a sacrifice.
Yeah,
This is sad.
we lit him on fire to build the tree, burn the tree down,
Okay,
so we could
his
release
spirit
the
will show up
episode.
next time.
Yeah, so I think that's covering most of our opinions. We'll definitely do updates on this if more happens, because
For sure.
I don't think either of us is done with this game yet.
No, this is this is
Absolutely
easily
not.
when I
Uh,
replay Souls games, this is going to be the one.
yeah, so I think overall, great game, definitely worth picking up. See you next time. Podcast Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, podcast platform of your choice. These Gamesclub episodes happen whenever they happen.
How it is.
That would be how it do.
I think also this is like closest like game release to actually doing a Games Club like time frame. Like this was like right
because
after.
we both dropped everything.
Exactly. Yeah.